necessary time as a control deck.
And here in game one of the last European playoff that we'll be having here, in our last Silvors versus HunterAce first round match that we'll be having, if that's not TJ enough for me, and here in this last round one that I'll be having in the European playoffs, against HunterAce's Even Paladin, how does this deck end up stacking up? You know, we talked about the Corpse Taker and the importance of that early defense, but I'm looking at HunterAce's Even Paladin deck, and this is a deck that's not really shy on aggression or ways to punish you if you leave a minion on board.
It's not at all. That's very true. And I think it's a real balancing act for Even Paladin to really ration the mage's AoE for them. Essentially, it's kind of a weird phrase, but you essentially need to make boards that you're happy with the mage AoEing, but they have to AoE it because of how much damage you can then push through going forward. And that makes the key cards for Silvors, things like that Corpse Taker that can contest without using removal, and also the Meteors and Voodoo Dolls that can actually be spot removal on individual minions as opposed to just being a full board nuke.
And kind of the way you described it to me, I'm looking at the way that Silvors' hand is composed right now, and I'm looking at HunterAce's hand, and it feels like to me that the key cards in Silvors' deck, when they line up against HunterAce's, that they're pretty massively punishing, that it's a very feast or famine style of control strategy, where if you're winning, you're very winning.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. And HunterAce has really drawn the get you to the late game kind of cards from Even Paladin, which it's definitely a deck it's capable of doing. It's capable of outlasting decks that are faster than it and then dominating with late game cards. And those are the cards that you're seeing in hand for HunterAce. The Equality, the Pyromancer, the True Silver Champion. Those are the tools that you're going to want to clear boards. That's not what you want to be doing against Control Mage. You want to just go, 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 foot on the pedal, Blessing of Kings on things, push damage through as fast as you can.
Punch, punch.
Yep.
Lots of punching.
Yes. Not just one punch.
Not a one punch kind of man.
No.
Neither am I. Ooh, this hand, just early on, this hand, just looking at the two of them stacked against each other, I feel like HunterAce could be in a lot of trouble this game.
Yes.
You know, I'm thinking about some of the late game tools with Lich King and Tyrion that HunterAce has and how powerful they are, but I'm looking over at Silvors' side. I'm seeing the Voodoo Dolls, I'm seeing the Polymorphs, and if those end up showing up in any reasonable stint of time, like HunterAce has really got his work cut out for him.
And on the other hand, Silvors has just kind of picked up this hand that can do exactly that kind of thing I was talking about in the introduction to the game, where he can just stall out with minions for the time being. He's not really being pressured to the point where an AoE is a big deal. He just needs a couple of mid-rangey things to play down. Ziliak's kind of the perfect stalling minion in Hearthstone now. It's a card, I don't know about you, Admiral, but like it's grown on me so much. Like originally I saw it as just this kind of niche control card, and now I try and find a way to put Ziliaks in like every deck I make.
It's definitely one of my favorite cards from that set. To me, there's no question about it. Just the way that card lines up for so many things. Like if you need to be aggressive and you need a safer minion to pressure your opponent because you're afraid of how they can punish, it's got a Divine Shield that prompts an extra action from your opponent. If you're looking for a minion that just does anything for you as you get to the late game and your deck scales up stronger, Ziliaks helps you do that via lifesteal and via taunt. That card, to me, goes in every deck that is not outright a burn deck. And I love it. It's just so well-rounded and such a generically powerful card. Yeah. That's one of my favorite things to do in Hearthstone turns. Take just generically good turns.
It's rare that the word generic is a compliment, but in this case, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love Ziliaks.
Admirable likes Ziliak so much. You can catch him trying to squeeze it into his even decks.
Only they would nerf it to 6 mana for me.
Yep.
I guess they did that with Argent Commander, sort of.
Sure.
Just doesn't have like the taunt or the lifesteal aspect, but it can go face.
Yes. It doesn't activate your Corpse Taker.
No, it does not. Not quite the same. HunterAce, you see the shake of the head as he's leaned in focused, and rightfully so. His hand is composed of, as Sottle very eloquently put it earlier, the get to the late game cards, and that's the opposite of where he wants to be in this particular matchup.
He wants to run away with this win long before Silvors gets to that mana where he's really devastating with his Control Mage. And like this turn that just happened from Silvors, like the Gluttonous Ooze destroy a True Silver, again, like I don't want to keep harping on about it, but it's the exact kind of thing I was talking about in the intro, where it's just minion to contest, gain a little bit of armor, remove some damage from the True Silver. It's just the perfect stalling tactic, which HunterAce doesn't want to see, because it's just a turn where Silvors didn't have to react. He didn't have to coin out an AoE. He didn't have to do something dramatic.
And as that continues, HunterAce has to commit more and more in order for that to take place.
Yeah.
I think a wise attack here of the Wild Pyromancer in face. I think a lot of the instinct there is to trade and try to protect your smaller minions. But in this matchup, hunterace just needs the burn damage wherever he can take it. As far as he's concerned, AoE is going to hurt no matter what. So take the damage while you can and say, you know what, if they've got AoE, I'm just going to be in a bad spot.
Is this as simple as Ziliax and 2 trades? Because it looks that simple to me.
It looks that simple to me as well. This is unity. It's precision. It's perfection.
I guess the decision point is 2 2/2s or fully take out the Wild Pyromancer. I think the Wild Pyromancer is more of a downside for hunterace than it is as an upside right now, making the value trades a little bit more beneficial.
This just leaves you with 2 more minions on board a threat. You know, every single time you do that, hunterace wants to compound the issue. He wants to present more threats as well. And that's better for Silvors every step of the way. You're looking at Flame Strike, you're looking at Primordial Drake, you're looking at Arcane Artificer and Jaina in hand, with Silvors basically having the best board position and being at a healthy life total. This is the dream spot for Big Mage.
You're just looking at the good stuff. The juice. The business.
The word that describes it in a very generic manner.
Like I said, rare to hear generic used as a compliment.
Yep, I mentioned burn. Second Argent Protector actually does put a bit of heat on Silvors in this spot, though. You know, being able to protect a Wild Pyromancer 2 turns in a row now, this damage is starting to add up.
It is. If hunterace can draw gas back-to-back from here, then he might have an opportunity. That Voodoo Doll does potentially change the equation, though, because there's really only one board state that needs dealing with currently from Silvors, because hunterace just does not really have a refill.
Ooh.
Does whiff on his Raven Familiar, though, and whiffs simultaneously on his webcam, unfortunately.
Yeah, apologies for the webcam. We'll get that fixed as soon as we can. In the meantime, we'll have a nice stock photo of Silvors in place. I'm thinking about the draws from hunterace that are huge right now. Nothing really is standing out to me. I'm looking at Terran being pretty good. I'm looking at Spiker's Steed being okay. I'm looking at Avenging Wrath to just compound the burnish. You know, with a quality and consecration in hand, I think that there's a lot of burn damage that hunterace can potentially pick up, but it's got to start pretty darn soon.
So, okay, I want to go back and talk about this turn in some detail, because I was initially confused, but we were mid-conversation about this Raven Familiar being played in the first place, because the Voodoo Doll play and just removing the damage off board immediately felt beneficial. He could have still then done that after the Raven Familiar play, but it costs him his coin, which is a huge deal when he has Jaina in hand. But then is it? Because even if he threw away his coin this turn, he has like a 7, 8, 9 curve available to him with Flame Strike, Primordial Drake, Frostlich, Jaina. So I guess, yeah, that's admirable. Just prompts me to sound like a genius, like the man that he is. The Arcane Artificer in hand can change the equation on whether you want to keep that coin, because it then enables your turn 7 to be Artificer coin Flame Strike into Primordial Drake, into Frostlich, Jaina.
Don't give away my secrets like that.
Oh.
That's how people sometimes sound smart, as they point things out to me too. I'm trying to give back here.
Admirable, do you know how long I've waited for a casting partner that makes me sound smart sometimes?
Your New Year's resolution was to stop being mean to Raven.
Damn it! No, I only made it to the 11th.
You tried your hardest. You've already failed.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to rewind to the idea of like whether that Raven Familiar on board was worth taking the 3 extra damage from not pinging your Voodoo Doll immediately.
Well, honestly, I think it was. And the reason I think it was because you get the refund on the Arcane Artificer. And I think it's exactly what hunterace is thinking about when he holds this Truce over champion, is if my opponent AoEs my board with Arcane Artificer, say it's Blizzard or it's Flame Strike, I need to be able to answer back, because that's the kind of card that can snowball and almost lock hunterace out of the game. So I think this is smart on both sides for Silvors to make a weak-looking turn, to maybe prompt hunterace into taking an aggressive stance, and then also for hunterace saving a Truce over champion as a nod to, if the disaster scenario happens, I do have a way out of it still. Draw my powerful cards, wipe out the Arcane Artificer, and hope I get there.
Right.
With these 2 hands stacking up right now, though, the 1s and 2s of hunterace are not looking so well against the 8s and 9 of Silvors. I think this one is a pretty foregone conclusion with the way that these last 2 turns have gone.
And I think hunterace just finally felt it as well. He made a face like he smelled some sour milk as that flame strike went off. And hunterace is a very, very confident Hearthstone player, and rightly so. You cannot question his ability to be, or his right to be confident. But, you know, I've spoken to him when he's coming up against terrible matchups in the next round of a tournament, and he still feels like he can outplay his opponent. I've seen him talk to him about tough positions he's been in, and he's felt like he could always find a way to dig out of them. But there is a moment where even the optimism and the rightfully earned confidence that hunterace possesses just melts away when you come up against a powerful start like this from Mage.
And melt away, I think, is the right word here, as you know, he's going to cool down with Frostless Jaina in a couple turns.
Yes, indeed.
Really hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah. Through some combination of the Flame Strike that was cast before and the Frostlich Jaina, there's some melting going on somewhere, and I'm sure that works.
It's like a Game of Thrones theme. You know, you think of Song of Ice and Fire, and then you think of the Flame Strike and the Jaina.
Yeah.
You think of lots of people, you know, over the course of that series, making their exit from the storyline. I think hunterace is #1 here in Game 1.
There's some of that gas I was talking about, though. But I said hunterace had to draw like consecutive gas for 2 turns, and that was about 4 turns ago at this point. He needed a lot more juice coming out frequently, but...
Well, Lich King actually is the one card I think that can present some opportunity. So Lich King comes down right now. I'm looking at Silvors' hand. It survives.
Yes.
And if it survives, and Silvors plays, say, Frostless Jaina into it, that means hunterace gets to connect for 8, and get a second Lich King card on the second part. So Lich King was the one card I think that could give hunterace a big chance of this.
You make a great point, and it makes that Raven familiar coming up against the Avenging Wrath and whiffing on the polymorph a huge deal, because Silvors is now -1 polymorph in hand that can potentially be used to deal with a Lich King.
And if you're in hunterace's spot, the swing of the weapon is a paramount effect to whether or not you can get out of the situation. It's Lich King, and then, you know, Frostmourne or Death Coil, I think, are your 2 big draws from Lich King at that point. And so here we are, after all the early game shenanigans where Silvors was dominating the situation, hunterace still with a chance.
Now, this attack is very interesting. I take your point. You bank damage now, and then if you hit Frostmourne, which he does not, you then have another weapon ready to equip and swing again on the next turn. However, with that equality in hand, if Silvors was to play a taunt minion of his own here, which he's well within rights to do, Lich King, Primordial Drake, both cards that we see in hand, you can't then equality and True Silver through to push the 8 with your Lich King to face. You will have to trade with the taunt minion.
Yeah, you'd get the 1/1 there that can attack through it, but, you know, let's say it happened to be the Primordial Drake that Silvors is holding on to. You don't have that push. In this spot, though, I'm, you know, a little bit worried for Silvors in this one. I think that this push from hunterace can be very real. There's no AoE for Silvors, and to me, that's one of the big factors here. The lifesteal, I think, is massive. The Army of the Dead, it's an okay card, but there's so many non-minion cards in hunterace's deck that are key right now. I'm looking at this Wind Fury Harpy, and I'm seeing the way to success be. That card lives.
I can see it.
I can't believe that hunterace is in this reasonable of a position given the early game so far. It's just the timing of that Lich King draw.
This is a really tough turn for hunterace as well, because he knows he has to deal with the ongoing threat of water elementals. They will just lock out too much damage with the freeze effect. But like throwing out the equality here just means his Lich King gets answered, but his 1/1s that he's going to get to use for equality activators later on are now being contested by the ping and turning into 3/6s. Like, there's so much to consider this turn for hunterace.
Really good pickup too.
It really is, yeah.
We just talked about the struggle to push through a taunt. And now suddenly Lich King, you know, hunterace's life total, he doesn't care about that right now.
And you see the auto defense matrix that hunterace has been holding onto for such a long time, now being timed to throw out against this Jaina water elemental board, which is doing so much work for him. A divine shield against lifesteal and a freeze effect is just so huge.
And not only that, it's that the fact that Lich King is taunting that effect as well. You know, hunterace played that Hydrologist on turn 2, took the auto defense matrix, then held it the entire game. No lifesteal.
You see the problem. I've been staring at that auto defense matrix in hunterace's hand for so long, trying to work out what his long-term plan was. And as always, hunterace, a much better player than me,
he's gonna win this game.
A plan that I had not considered.
Holy smokes!
And that admirable is so important, because that divine shield, you saw it happen. No freeze because no damage is dealt. No life steal because no damage is dealt. That's what that secret, which was taken from a turn 2 hydrologist, was about all this time. If Jaina came down, he could stick a threat to the board which could not be frozen and would lock out healing from his opponent.
I'm like shocked because
he's an absurd human.
Like the Lich King was a massive draw. There's no question about that. But you said the kind of hand that hunterace had was just a get to the late game kind of hand. That's not a matchup where he wants to get to the late game really. But he found a spot where it just ended up working. And then looking at the Avenging Wrath blocking the polymorph from the Ravens familiar, it was the little things that happened that ended up leading to this big position for hunterace, and a lot of it is because of holding that auto defense matrix. So many times in that matchup I just snap take a redemption, or I immediately take a noble sacrifice to try to block something, but the auto defense matrix shutting off the lifesteal and the freeze in that turn creates a victory for him because Silver's hand is just stacked with big things.
And let's call it what it is. We both completely gave up on that game from hunterace's side when it got to a certain point, and hunterace shows exactly what I was talking about before. He's so much faith in his own ability to get out of situations like that, and the reason why is that he's capable of making long-term strategies like you just saw that other players just sometimes don't see. Other casters certainly don't see.
It's pretty rare to see it done so well in such a bad position, but we got more coming up. If you want to see more matches like that and watch more hunterace, stick around because we got to go to a quick break. When we come back, more round 1 coverage.
Welcome to Rastakan's Rumble, Hearthstone's newest expansion, including 135 new cards. Hosted by the God King Rastakan, the Rumble is a gladiatorial celebration of all things troll, where 9 teams, 1 for each Hearthstone class, have converged on Gurabashi Arena to fight for glory. Each team is dedicated to Aloha, primal gods of prodigious power, who fight in the arena with amazing, game-changing abilities. The Loa empower their team with spirits, rare minions that bolster their team's strengths with potent passive effects and gain stealth for the first turn. Each team is led by a champion, legendary troll minions handpicked by the Loa for the Rumble. The abilities of Loa, Spirit, and Champion combine to form incredible synergies, making amazing effects possible. Some cards have the new keyword Overkill. When cards with Overkill attack and deal more damage than a target's health, they trigger a powerful bonus effect. We'll see you in the Rumble.
With the casters!
If I were to create a dream team with myself and 2 other players, I'd pick Brian Kibler and Shiro, his dog. I think us 3 would be an unstoppable force.
Well, I actually do a bunch of content via OmniSlash with Firebat and Zillet. They're both super smart players, super dedicated, really good, and I think that they would work well together alongside me because we worked together before.
I guess I'll put Shiro as my #1 draft pick, and then Kibler can still come in, but he just knows that he wasn't my #1 choice now.
Whoa, who would I pick as my 2 teammates? Goodness, you put me on the spot here. Well, I gotta pick TJ, because TJ's like, he's like my brother.
That's Admirable's one of them. Longtime casting buddy of mine.
I think we can game with the best of them. If they think they can't beat us, I challenge them to see if they can hit Ragnarok shots better than us.
And we have so much built up synergy, and we'd be able to find the best decks pretty quickly, or at least find the weirdest decks that would lose in a blazing glory.
I challenge them because they could not. We are the best at that. I know because one time TJ and I won 11 coin flips in a row.
And Frodan would be my second one, just because he's always got everybody else's backs.
Welcome back. We're amidst the series in our first round here at the European playoffs, our last European playoffs that'll be taking place. And hunterace has a 1-0 lead over Silvors. He just came off a win with his Odd Paladin even Paladin versus the big mage of Silvors, and Sottle and I had all but counted out hunterace in that game number 1, but somehow, some way, he continues to prove why he's the best in the world.
Yeah, and we were talking about it more during the break, and there was, so many key outcomes. Some of which the players had control over, some they didn't. It's the polymorph failure of a draw for Silvors early on was a big problem. The Lich King draw was just in the nick of time for hunterace, but it could have also come on any of the 3 previous turns where he didn't really have powerful stuff to do with his mana, and he wouldn't have suffered from floating a turn just to have a Lich King in hand later on. But there are also just moments of brilliance from hunterace where he set up to punish the Frost Lich Jaina first and foremost, and then of course that clutch auto defense matrix play later on. But new game, moving on, and we're going to see some Odd Warrior coming out from hunterace, and what I'm choosing to call Hybrid Hunter. I don't know how you feel about this, Admirable.
I was just about to ask you what we're going to call this.
I feel like if it was good enough to call the Hunter deck that mashed 2 different strategies together in the past, like, why are we not doing this now? What's the problem with it?
Well, I don't think that there's a problem with it. I think this is something that just really has not been much encountered yet. To me, this is quite a unique list. I have seen this tried a couple times before, but not really as clean as I'm looking at the list right now from Silvors. It's a Hunter deck that uses Master's Call, of course, but he does have Subject 9 and a secret package in here alongside Lesser Emerald Spellstone. The first player I saw attempt something like this was Zalay, but Zalay had trimmed the secrets down to just a few secrets in there. He said, secrets are bad cards and I don't want to have them in my deck, so I'll put in a few of them with a Spellstone because 2 3/3s is just still a pretty decent turn. I played through it a bit, and it was okay. I didn't mind playing the deck, but I'm looking at this one, and the secrets do worry me a tad, but it does have a strong Master's Call, Dire Frenzy package in it. That's the base of a strong Hunter deck, so I'm okay with Hybrid Hunter, but, I'm not necessarily okay with the matchup that he's facing against from hunterace. A lot of times the Master's Call is built to be very strong against Warrior, but what I'm looking at here is a lot of secrets in the deck for Silvors.
There are a lot, yes. And they are, even when the Zul'jin recycles them later on, they're really of little to no worth against Warrior. I think that's one of the justifications to mention about having so many secrets in your deck is that you have Zul'jin to then recycle them later on, which can make them into good cards. A secret that you get to play for 2 mana in Hunter, as you said, Zalay pointed out, is not very good. A 2 mana secret that you get to then play again for free later on that's kind of nice. But yes, you rightly mentioned that this is not exactly a walk in the park for Hunter, and Zul'jin is not the hero card that you're going to focus on in this matchup. It's going to be the other boy, Admirable.
Yeah, at some point Zul'jin can come into effect, but Deathstalker Rexxar is really the heavy-hitting one. I think that is the most important card in the matchup, bar none. I don't really think there's much question about it. I think if you told Silvors his hand is going to do nothing for 5 turns and then play Deathstalker Rexxar on 6 versus Odd Warrior,
sign me up.
Yeah, he goes, great, give me the Rexxar. You know what, just don't even give me the rest of the cards. Just give me the Rexxar, I'll go from there.
Yeah. All of these other cards are just taking up space that could be Builder Beasts.
Exactly. Like, Tundra Rhino, that's really, I'd say, one of the prime effects in the deck. But, something that ends up missing from this list when you put in Tundra Rhino and then all the secrets is you don't have the Timberwolves, and you don't have that giant kill potential that you would normally have otherwise. To me, this is spelling, a troublesome just overall macro game plan, I guess, from Silvors, where he has to focus on where that endgame spot is and how does he find himself successful, because with the way his deck is built, I could see this matchup going to fatigue state unless he's blowing hunterace out of the water.
And fatigue becomes a big problem because this isn't a tracking deck, which used to be one of the big breakpoints we talk about in this matchup, but it is a Master's Call deck. So what can then happen is that if you then cast those cards, if you then cast Zul'jin later on, it can then recycle those cards, and you end up drawing an enormous amount of cards from your deck. So suddenly, Odd Warrior's win condition is not kill every single beast you can make from Deathstalker Rexxar, which is very, very difficult, if not impossible, for them to do. It's just kill enough of them until you die from fatigue because you've drawn too many cards.
Yeah.
That's something that Hunter players quite often have to avoid, but at the same time, how consistently can you draw your Deathstalker Rexxar without tracking towards it, which this deck does not feature, or thinning your deck of beasts, making it more likely that you will draw Deathstalker Rexxar, which is the strategy this deck does go with.
So look at the right side of your screen and keep note of that total, the 21 and the 19. Those are the deck sizes for each player. However, hunterace is facing a bit of a problem early on. He's facing down a Wind Fury Demetia.
Problem solved.
Yes and no, though. You think about the AoE in this deck, Silvors does have Spellstones.
Yes.
And he does have Zul'jin. And so that is the talking point I was going to revisit with Zul'jin earlier on, was the amount of AoE that's in Hunterace's deck. Once it gets depleted, Zul'jin becomes a much more powerful effect afterwards with just what ends up building on the board. And so I think that's something to really pay attention to, is how Hunterace uses his AoE. The first one I think can be used quite liberally, but as you approach that 4th AoE, the second flurry, the second brawl, that's when things can get a little bit more tricky, and he may have to play with his cards in a different manner.
Yeah, and I just saw HunterAce just kind of raise his eyebrows, look up at expectancy, and now you see the relief come in instead. I just took a moment as HunterAce looked up and sort of looked like he was expecting something. I was like, what is he expecting? And it just took one brief glance at Silvors' mana to tell what HunterAce was hoping not to see, and that is the Deathstalker Rexar coming down. The turn passed with just a hero power, and you saw HunterAce's reaction. He knows, as we've been talking about, how crucial that card is to Hunter's success in the matchup.
Something else to talk about too, no Hunter's Mark in Silvors' deck, and so these 5/9s are much more tanky than they usually are. A lot of times you play this, you expect it to get Hunter's Marked. That's not happening this game. Also, I want to visit the point of Warrior versus Deathstalker Rexar. I am personally not necessarily in the opinion that Deathstalker Rexar is the end-all be-all versus Warrior. I think Warrior has some quite good game against
Just say that it was?
I said it's the most important card in the deck
Okay.
for Silvors. I think against Warrior, Warrior's got game to take it down.
Oh, you're
now.
saying Warrior is capable of beating an early Deathstalker Rexar?
I think quite capable.
Yes, I agree with that statement as well, yeah.
One of the big things to me, though, is I feel like this is a card that is overused in the matchup that HunterAce just drew, the Dr. Boom, the Mad Genius.
You tend not to play it in the matchup?
I tend not to play it for a while because I think that life total is a major deal in the matchup, and I think being able to pad your life total is a good thing. However, the kicker to that is when you're actually leading. I think when you're leading, you have more of a liberty to play Dr. Boom Mad Genius than when you are behind. I think if you're behind, this is a card that all but seals your fate a lot of times when you end up playing it. Plus,
Admirable. I don't think you could have echoed HunterAce's dilemma more perfectly just then, because he reached for Dr. Boom. He then realized the implications of what playing it meant, and then suddenly rolled back in his chair, hands to his mouth, considering the pros and cons that you were laying out. And in the end, he does choose to go for it. How do you feel about it?
the reason why I think he's going for it here is because of the coin shield slam. I think without this, you don't get the tempo necessary to justify this play, and you end up further behind. Because he's playing it and he's maintaining a lead with the Dr. Boom Mad Genius, that to me is the key part of this facet right here. That's the time to play it, when you're taking the lead as the Warrior player.
Okay.
And so now for Silvors, it's, well, I got to get something rolling.
Yeah, remember how Admirable told you guys at home to keep an eye on those numbers next to the players' decks?
Not as important anymore.
Yeah, 11 to 19.
HunterAce is winning that battle, so now Silvors has to find a way to get aggressive.
You see Silvors just kind of happily burning away one of his secrets here, just hoping against hope to just make space, or rather remove cards from his deck so that he could just play one of the secrets that he draws and still have maximum opportunity to draw that Deathstalker Rexar on a following turn.
To me, that's always such an interesting facet of Subject 9, is I'm so used to cards when they do effects like that, it's fill your hand with it.
Yeah.
Subject 9 just doesn't care. He's like, no, we're gonna, here it is.
Yeah.
Right here. Just, don't, you can't hold this right now. Just drops it, it shatters on the floor.
Yeah. I said, no, read the card, idiot. I'm going to draw the number of secrets that it says on the card.
Follows instructions well.
Yeah.
Good job, Subject 9.
The Subject 9 performance review? Is that really where we're at right now? I would give Frodan 10 out of 10 for self-assessment in his performance review from his comments earlier.
TJ, on the other hand.
Yeah, no. Needs work. HunterAce just going through, ruling out secrets. Something that we didn't talk about on the previous turn because we were so focused on the Dr. Boom decision, I think rightly so, is that HunterAce had this very real decision of like attack or no attack, and at what point to attack when he gained the armor to activate the Gem-Studded Golem. And that is really a key point against any kind of hunter with a big secret package in it, is just a lot of the time, if you don't have to attack, if you're not being forced to try and trade with a minion, just don't bother. Like, so much of it helps you out because you quite often just lock out secrets in your opponent's hand. I believe that's not the case for Silvors because he's only playing single copies of secrets throughout his deck, so you don't like choke a second copy of Wandering Monster or whatever else in your opponent's hand. But a lot of the time, if you attack into a big hunter's secret makeup like this, you just give them a bigger board than what they started with.
You get punished.
Yeah.
I think that against Hunter, it's the one time where the lost art of building board tension really matters, where instead of popping the secrets immediately and then trying to take advantage of what's remaining on board, a lot of times it's right to just keep putting stuff on board and foregoing your attack and waiting for the right moment to absolutely dismantle what's happening there. Because the second part of that is, as Silvors continues to play secrets, he's potentially buffing a Spellstone. If you're losing your minions along the way to try to activate secrets, what ends up happening is you're not able to answer the Spellstone as efficiently either. And so to me, the patience and that balance there is a really key element to taking advantage of them in the maximum way. hunterace, though, he sees his Gem-Studded Golem bite the dust and chooses to attack immediately. I'm kind of interested by that because I felt like this Direhorn Hatchling was sizing up pretty well on board.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I'm not sure what he expected to happen in terms of outcome from the secrets. It looked like he attacked with the Direhorn and then was slightly surprised that it was just a freezing that activated.
7 armors.
But he's going to take the opportunity to just kind of get himself a little bit ahead on board right now and get a 7-8 down into play, which does dominate for the time being. But there, finally, is that card that gets the party started. And hunterace, little shake of the head to say, you know what, 10 cards left, drew Rexar. Yeah, fine. That's kind of the situation that I'm going to expect to have to deal with if I'm going to win this matchup.
I feel kind of surprised that this was the play from Silvors, honestly, at this point.
Okay.
I feel to me that he's fallen so far behind this value race that to me, I want to, similar to the role that hunterace was playing last game, where he wants to force the AoEs away from Silvors. Silvors this game, I feel like, needs to do that to hunterace. I was looking, because you have both hero cards in hand, I'm looking towards the Spellstone, follow up with the Zul'jin, and once your opponent's expended a lot, hit him with the Rexar afterwards. Is Silvors going the opposite direction, where he's hitting him with the Rexar, trying to get him to play a lot of valuable cards and then overload him with the Zul'jin? Like, it just feels weird to me.
Do you ever want to play those cards in that order against Warrior and lose the Deathstalker Rexar hero power for the Zul'jin one?
That's where I'm at right now. That's why I feel like the Deathstalker Rexar is the after effect.
Right,
I'm looking at the Spellstone this turn. I'm looking into, Spellstone Tundra Rhino, into Zul'jin, into Deathstalker Rexar.
Yes.
This to me feels like a pretty hasty play where Silvors drew Deathstalker Rexar and kind of goes, finally. Just jams it into play. I don't have a ton of experience in this matchup because I'm just not really a Secret Hunter player, but I've played against it a ton. I like when the Rexar goes away to the Zul'jin.
Player, yeah. hunterace again, choosing to attack through.
Yeah.
You said some very key words where you were giving that explanation, though, which were Tundra Rhino and Spellstone, which is a huge combination that you very much have to look out for in these kind of late-game focused matchups. It's not something that comes up often, but it's something that you have to be aware of as a really big possibility later in the game, especially against the slower decks like Odd.
And so kind of thinking about it, again, doing my double take, that could be part of the plan for Silvors here, is that his deck is so low that Tundra Rhino Dire Frenzy becomes a real combo with then Tundra Rhino Spellstone backed up later on. And then you have, multiple ways of that.
Don't go off on the Spellstone on your first Tundra Rhino. You use your first Tundra Rhino to get more of them in the deck, and then you go off with a later Tundra Rhino that you draw.
Right, and then maybe you even get a second Spellstone, and you're able to unleash 2 waves of that.
Sure.
That to me is part of the impact of playing the Dr. Boom as well, is that if at some point you lose that lead, the damage starts to pile on, and suddenly those Tundra Rhino combos look devastating. Looking at the Lifesteal Zombeast. With the augmented Elec to potentially shuffle.
Double shuffle,
yeah.
That's crazy.
There's a lot going on here, and I think, I maybe was pretty hasty with my judgment on Silvors. I was just thinking in terms of pure efficiency. The one thing I wasn't thinking about is actually winning the game.
Right. And the double shuffle changes so much because not only does it give Silvors all these extra threats, it also gives him so much more time. It's that equation that I was talking about earlier where the Odd Warrior does not want to try and just kill every single threat that Hunter can make until they build a board, because that very rarely happens and takes forever. They just want to have to outlast Hunter until Hunter runs out of cards. And if you're double-decker shuffling Zombeasts back into your deck with a Dire Frenzy activation twice...
That's the hottest new dance move on the market.
Yeah, exactly.
The double shuffle.
And again, it plays into that Zul'jin debate because he might just be saying, I'm never going to play Zul'jin because I don't want to recast my card draw effects. I just want to draw cards one by one for the rest of the game.
And I think that's totally reasonable. I think that's actually quite a smart call in a lot of situations. But
yup.
Here we go.
It's happening.
He do miss out on a Rexar activation, not the worst thing in the world. And, you know, talking about the Omega Assembly from hunterace last turn, second copy of Ziliax, and then also the Clockwork Automaton, which has some pretty funny interactions with Kaboom, the 1 damage to your AoE to your opponents, and then also the laser. Pinpoint 6 at that point. It does not double your armor, however.
Reactor core online.
But when you got a Ziliax, and you got a 7 attack, rushed, lifesteal, divine shield minion, usually good enough.
Yeah, the timing of Dr. Boom, the decision that we've really seen hunterace just have the biggest debate with himself over does seem to be paying off here, because just this extra tempo, the rush, and the ability to have slightly more tempo-heavy hero powers have now put hunterace in a position where he is starting to win the board little by little, and it does look like that's something that he's going to have to do now, because Silvors has found such a successful strategy preventing himself from fatiguing.
Yeah, and the more I'm seeing this game plan pan out, watching the alternative use of the Tundra Rhino Spellstone, which is fight for board, I think this is really smart from Silvors. And if you're a Secret Hunter player, I think this is the kind of game to watch if you want to get better at this deck. Silvors is executing a very different style of attack, which is utilize Build-A-Beast Dire Frenzy. That's the purpose of the Dire Frenzy in the matchup. Specifically put things that can't be in your deck now into your deck. You even out that card count total, and with the double shuffle Lifesteal Rush Beast, you have a lot of staying power when you lose tempo against the control deck. That's really typically a frightening point, is losing tempo against the control deck.
Yes. One thing that he does have to worry about, you say it's Lifesteal Rush, right, on that Zombeast as well as the shuffle?
I believe so,
on
yeah.
the Zombeast? Yes, it is. I'm pretty sure it is, yeah. 4/7, so he got Scale Hide with it. Yeah, it makes sense. So when you choose to play that, you then have...
Oh, it's a 7.
Yeah, because they got
Dire
buffed by
Frenzy.
Dire Frenzy as well, yeah.
I was like, wait, there's no 7 type.
And there's now 2 of them. But I will get to the point I'm trying to make eventually, which is you're putting a Lifesteal Rush minion on the board, and you know, because this is open deck list, that your opponent still has 2 Faceless Manipulators available to him, which you're giving them a really, really powerful opportunity to use those Faceless and stabilize the board as soon as you play these minions into play. So the timing of them is actually very, very important as well.
Is that an Echo Zombeast? I'm hoping it is, because the Echo feels like such a vital tool for Silvors right now, where you want to be doing big things as much as possible. You want your turns to spend all 10 mana. You want them to be annoyingly powerful to hunterace. And that's a potential win condition in this game right now.
So here we go. We'll see if hunterace is going to use one or both of these Faceless Manipulators in this spot.
Option for the Tank Master as well.
Yep.
Not really too much to transform. You know, Tank Master could come in a pinch, though. Hit like a big stealth minion that you're worried about.
He might also want to utilize this Shield Slam before that potentially this armor goes away and he doesn't hit another 7 to take it back up again.
So that would be where my head turns next, is Faceless Shield Slam, laser off the 3/2.
Yep.
Bunch of big haymakers going back and forth.
Okay, then.
He could even use the Lifesteal Rush to trade, and then instead of hero powering the 3/2, Zola another copy of it back into his hand.
Oh. Could just Zola another copy back anyway.
That use thing.
Can he?
Use. Well, you Faceless, then just Faceless Zola. You don't necessarily have to forego the hero power in that instance.
Right. But then you're not shield slamming, right?
I think it's okay. I think the Shield Slam is better, because, you know, it kills a 7/7. I really like doing that.
This is where the game does become extremely interesting. You know, the early game, it's a little bit more interactive with this version of the deck, because this version of the deck does actually play minions that can compete. We saw Silvors generate like a 1-drop into Crackling Razormaw type of board early on. that hunterace had to find answers for. But this is where the matchup does get incredibly interesting, because hunterace is not really going to run out of answers for some time, but he's still got to divine the correct answers for the correct situation against so much concealed information from the opponent in terms of what kind of beasts they're building, how many of those huge threats they've drawn. And we see Silvors just go ahead and rip off that Master's Call, which does, again, push him back into a little bit of fatigue territory once more, just to pick up some extra threats in hand.
That feels interesting to me as well. You know, not really much of a way to spend his additional 3 mana in that spot. But does he really want to peel the cards out of his deck? This is... I'm very surprised at how aggressively Silvors has played with just the number of cards in deck. You know, I guess there is a second copy of Dire Frenzy, so the Elec, again, still pads that.
Yes.
But with the other copy, there's still a ton of these lifesteal rushes that are in the deck to begin with. Just curious to me. It's quite rare that, you know, I've seen players play it this aggressively with their deck and, you know, with the number of cards in it. But the more I'm seeing the game start to pan out, the additional options for Silvors feel like they're very important to me. And so I'm liking what I'm seeing. You know, typically when you want to break it down, aggression is the key way to win a game. Some form of aggression, almost regardless of where it ends up being. Aggression is the key. It's just how do you figure out what works and what doesn't. 2 small costs as a nod to efficiency. However, when your minions cost 2 more,
It's not particularly efficient.
not immediately.
I do respect the choice of just a cheap beast here, because like Silvor's problem right now is that he just has too much stuff. He has all of these enormous 5-mana beasts in his deck. He has another Dire Frenzy that he's going to want to cast at some point. He has this Spellstone that's another expensive, huge board state. And he has a Zombie that fills his entire hand with 1/1s in hand and had the option to take another one off his Builder Beast there. So what that signals to you is that you have enough stuff to do. You just want to take cheap things that you can get out of your hand quickly.
Yeah, so I guess at what point do you forego a Build-A-Beast activation and just take a decent turn?
Right. I think that's something that a lot of people really, really struggle with Deathstalker Rexar. It's just, you know, I think the initial general rule of just press the button every turn, it's hard to go wrong with that, but when you get to this kind of level, you do have to find those spots where it is wrong to build a beast, and you do just have to take that max out tempo play instead.
Yeah, so to me, it's not necessarily a right or wrong style of decision. To me, it's more like a grading scale. Like, sometimes the Build-A-Beast, A+, sometimes Build-A-Beast, C-. It's good, but it wasn't the best.
It passes. You're graduating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you could have done better.
But your parents are still disappointed in you.
Still? After all this time, Mom and Dad?
Bow to the fang and claw.
A pair of links is good enough.
Again, Halazi just coming up over and over again off these Builder Beasts.
Yeah, I was looking at the Life Drinker in that spot. You know, that has tended to me to feel like a very critical minion against a lot of situations as well. And yep, there it is. It's just a very efficient tool in its own right. And suddenly hunterace starting once again to fall behind. Yeah, Reckless Flurry is typically the AoE you want to be using once you have the Dr. Boom down. And, you know, once you start getting that low armor total, you start to run out of options that are viable with Reckless Flurry. To me, that's another one of the weaknesses of the card. You have to wait until that 7 armor crops up to be able to use it. But the game is starting to be a takeover for Silvors. He still has another Dire Frenzy left in deck. He has Augmented Elex to double shuffle them in, so hunterace is losing that fatigue race because the right Build-A-Beast showed up pretty early. How do you come back?
I don't have too many answers for you. Silvors can't really afford to burn cards at this point, which is a trap you can fall into with you know, Halazi being involved. We've seen his sequencing be very on point so far. He's played out cards, and then at the earliest opportunity where he's had the space of 1 card in his hand, he's then built a beast, and then he's spent his remaining mana afterwards, which is quite a complicated situation. Is the completely optimal way to progress through his turn, and he's consistently doing it, which means he's showing no signs of really making a mistake that might potentially burn that last Dire Frenzy. And that could potentially be HunterAce's final hope at this point. But we counted him out way too early last time, Admirable, so I'm reticent to try and do it again. But you know what? I am. HunterAce is in trouble.
Don't back down.
Yeah.
You take a stance, and you keep it.
There's one thing you'll never have to remind me to do. It's take a stance. This is the stance.
I was just iterating it.
Okay.
I was doing it for emphasis. Is that finally a weak Build-A-Beast that's come in? I feel like it's been pretty all-star for Silvors in this one. It's been just fantastic minion after fantastic minion thus far. Still fighting, though. Weaponized Pinata.
Where does your mind go at this point? What legendaries are really fishing you out of this spot? Don't say Nat Pagel.
No, I wasn't going to say that one. That was the last thing I was going to say. And I would have said Pagel. I would never say the other word that
You're
you
right,
said.
yeah, because you're dumb, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Spell bagel for me.
B-A-G-L-E.
B-A-G-L-E! Shut up! C-.
It's literally a dude's name!
C-.
With the consonants reversed.
Okay, that's not the legendary I was thinking of. You know, actually, that one did crop into my head for a second, but I went, that doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's pirates. I was thinking something spectacular needed to happen here. Like another hero card comes to mind in my spot from Weaponized Pinata. But it says put a legendary minion in your hand, though, right?
Yes, I believe so.
No Zola on the Weaponized Pinata either. What is he looking to Zola in this matchup, I guess?
I've been wondering about that, like, since the term where we kind of went through all the different lines with the Shield Slam, Faceless, and Hero Power combinations.
Poisonous it is. You don't want that one to stick around for too much longer.
Uh-huh.
That might be actually part of HunterAce's game plan. Let that stick around and slow my opponent down for a bit. Oh, shake of the head. That's not good. Yeah, I don't know. These weak boards are prompting important cards from HunterAce.
It's worth noting as well that HunterAce, I believe, has played the entire game up to this point without a Super Collider. Is that correct? He just hasn't drawn either
correct.
of them yet. Which is just making his life so much more difficult in terms of removing these kind of board states.
Yeah.
The good news is that he does still have 32 health to play with when he draws one of those Super Colliders.
I would say that Super Collider tends to be one of the most important cards in the matchup versus Hunter. It's just so good at forcing your opponent to look at their hand and go, how do I stick something to board? This is problem.
This is problem.
Yes, it feels big problem.
Just because it's Odd Warrior, you don't have to speak like a mech.
Beep, boop.
Cheese. Petra.
This is problem. Dinomatic, I think, is a fine Zola target. No discovery on the hero power as well. That's what Hunter is shaking his head about. Getting hero powers that I can't utilize because there's too many cards in my hand.
Yes.
Makes sense. Oh, and Mukla. Is there anything in Hunter Ace's deck left he'd like to burn, potentially? Nope. I was looking at the list, I'm like, these are all pretty mediocre.
And that's a hard pass.
Yeah, you would take Mukla likely as just efficiency. It's a big beast that you combine something with.
Big boy.
Purple approved.
Kill commands a 3-2 just to maintain board dominance as much as he can.
If you're going to pick one to burn, though, that's probably one of them.
And just again, the sour milk look on HunterAce's face has come out again.
HunterAce, in my time speaking with them, the big one that comes to mind for me is at BlizzCon during HGG, where I was talking to him about his third-place performance that he was disappointed with.
Yeah.
And he was telling me, we could have done better, we could have done this, we could have done that. And I'm like, save some for someone else, you know? You've won, like, so much this year. Third place, be proud of yourself.
Oh.
He immediately began criticizing himself. He was happy to do so. But in the midst of play, I have found that if HunterAce makes what he would consider a less than perfect play in his eyes, it is immediate show in face.
Yes. And he always comes away, like you said, with so many ideas about what to do differently. And yeah, sorry, this is a play that I haven't seen in such a long time. We were actually talking about this yesterday, like various different methods that we used to use to BGH opposing minions, you know, Dark Iron Dwarves and Abusive Sergeants. And we were talking about like the potential to do it with Bestial Wrath before it got changed. So it was only friendly minions. And now we see it coming out with a banana. But I do want to finish that point about hunterace because I also spoke to him like shortly after he lost at BlizzCon, and I pointed out to him, just because I know he's the kind of player that would want to know this, that he was 1 damage off lethal, his team was 1 damage off lethal at various points in the game, and someone on Twitter pointed out a very hard to spot situation where they could have dealt 1 more damage. So I explained this to hunterace because, again, I know he's a perfectionist and he would want to know that situation. He said, oh yeah, I didn't spot that. But here's these other 7 things that we could have done differently to win the game, right? Like that's just how his brain works. He's constantly finding all these different lines, and the other Norwegian players that he surrounded himself with are, or if not on his level, very, very close to him as well.
Yeah, he actually expressed that was one of the issues that they struggled with as a team, was that there were so many strong players and they all had so many strong ideas that they were having trouble coming to a timely agreement amongst themselves. What a strange spot to be in. We're all too good.
Yeah.
Looking at Faceless Silence here, perhaps. Faceless Zola.
Oh!
Whoa! Whoa, hang on. Hang on. Does he think that's Zola because it's a 3-cost legendary? I don't know about this one. Wow. I still don't know about this one.
Oh, now that I think about it more, actually, if he Zola's his own guy, it just goes back as a regular augmented Elic, right? If it resets to the default card position in its hand from the Zola.
Well, it would still be the Build-A-Beast version. So it would still have Lifesteal and Rush.
Okay.
The Zombeast combines it into a card. It's not a buffed card.
Okay.
It would take away the Dire Frenzy buffs because it's a reverse progression from board to hand.
Okay.
To me, that's just interesting because if you silence, you peel away the buffs as well.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it's the fear of not being able to use Tankmaster effectively ever again. hunterace maybe feels he's that far behind.
There's a lot to dissect. Just in that one turn.
Yeah, if you expect to be able to do it in 75 seconds, you're wrong.
As the Echo Rush that Admirable called out multiple turns ago was just going to be a useful commodity, which at the time, it seemed it was going to be very rapidly because Silvors was just had a hand that he was looking to fill up with value. He just found such other explosive things to do between now and then that he was able to just end up getting maximum value out of that Echo Rush with the Iron Beak Owl, and it's something that he potentially could have considered for a situation even as niche as like the second Direhorn Hatchling plus Faceless Manipulator. He could then Echo Rush both of those with the Iron Beak Owl, silence them off, but since he saw that get burned, he was free to use the Iron Beak Owls in different situations. How do you feel about an 8-mana 6/3?
Not so good. Not so good at all. And I'm looking at all the the Lifesteal Rush Zombeasts that Silvors has been able to build and thinking about the size of them and how many of them left there are. There's 4 in hand and there's more in deck.
Yes.
I believe there's 3 more in there. 4 more?
Sure.
It's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to get to the build 10-mana minions point where all of the utility cards seem to have been expended. What's the biggest thing I can do?
hunterace
Rapidly getting insane.
Just needs to start asking himself the same question as well, which is try and find something massive to do, because he's not going to have enough removal to stack this up one by one against all of these enormous augmented Elics that have been built.
Now, we say that, of course, and when the minions have Rush, it's very different, though. Replicating Menace,
It's true.
the drill, the 6-mana drill card that makes like the 2 1/1s in your hand. There's so many of them that have higher impact because they have Rush. And so I think that with the right rolls on the Dr. Boom Hero powers, he does have a real chance of getting there.
picked up Cornered Sentry, which gives him options like Cornered Sentry Brawl to eliminate even, you know, small and tall boards, narrow and tall boards from Silvors, which is what he's pretty much going to end up with in this position. Ends up taking a blowback combination there off the Builder Beast.
Looks like a poisonous Divine Shield, maybe.
Yeah.
I think I saw Stone Tusk on that second one.
Okay.
Sorry, the screen blacked out.
Not good enough, Admirable. C-.
Yeah, in general, I'd say the random mech's not quite as good as the Build-A-Beasts, though. There's been a 2/2 on board that can't attack unless you play a spell forever.
Yeah.
There's a Scorpomatic in hand, you know, that's not happening.
Maybe this lends to some of the thinking on the Iron Beak Owl versus Tinkmaster on the previous turn as well. Like, worst case scenario, he could have still dealt with the Augmented Elec Builder Beast if the Tinkmaster had whiffed, unless it had transformed his own guy. But he's saving the Iron Beak Owl for a situation where he really had no other decent answer to it, and maybe that was his thinking, that Iron Beak Owl was just a better emergency card.
Yeah, and something else I'm thinking is just how stacked the hands are against hunterace right now. Like, Silvors has been out training in the jungle the entire time. Just every day getting stronger and stronger, fighting bigger and bigger monsters and taming them. hunterace been, meanwhile, trying to find the light bulb and still not coming up. It's like an inventor's laboratory thing versus like training in the...
Yeah. For those of you at home, I had a very puzzled look on my face.
It was extremely puzzled.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then the light bulb came on.
It did. Hey, we bring it all back around. Silvors was just another one of those style of turns where he just had to say, all right, I'm just dump a card out of my hand so I can build another beast, and then just play a card so I don't burn a card. That's just been the pattern of so many of his turns up until this point. And now you see, because of all of those dire frenzies, it's actually hunterace is the person who finds himself fatiguing first. And is really, what that means for him is that it's just not good enough to find answers to these board states. He actually has to take initiative and win the game because he's the one dying to fatigue.
Yeah, it's a rough position to be in for sure. And now the damage is going to start piling on. And Kaboom's not the one you're looking for. Perhaps it is while you just took a bulldozer to try to rush down a beast, but I think these next couple of turns are a compounding issue where hunterace is going to be in real trouble.
Job's done.
Silvors says,
sure.
You know what?
Yeah.
You've done enough, Rexar.
Yeah.
Go retire. Oh, by the way, forgot about that. Zul'jin recasts the Dire Frenzies. And hunterace's look is accurate.
Yeah, this is what we call a testimonial for Deathstalker Rexar. He's had his 10 years of service. He's getting himself a nice little exhibition game while Zul'jin takes over the reins. And I think this is perfectly timed because, yeah, Silvors, this does everything he needs it to do. It builds one last huge board for him. It, again, continues to just throw cards back into his deck.
Ooh,
and then
does burn those.
It doesn't aware of that. Yeah. Same function as the Subject 9 we were talking about previously. It very specifically says how many cards it's going to draw, and it will draw them.
Overall, though, this has felt like a masterclass performance from Silvors. This is how the matchup is pictured by a lot of players. And while I think that this was a tad on the weighted side for Silvors with the early Elec in the Dire Frenzy, this is the ideal situation. And when you get this opportunity, seize it. hunterace has had a very limited potential of winning this game for quite some time. And I think he's made a good effort of it. But the extra cards in deck, just a massive difference. You know, think about the Warrior matchups, for instance, where players are going as far as to add in Tomb Raider, like a 5-mana 3/3 that adds a Death Rattle that died this game to your hand to get an additional cube or an additional Direhorn Matriarch. They'll try to get one extra card in their deck. Silvors got about 12 to 18 this game.
hunterace choosing to keep on trucking, though.
He's no quitter.
Nope.
The hero power is still something else from hunterace's side. It could get it done.
Casper, is that good enough? The 10-6
It's not.
winning? Is
It's
that
not.
good enough?
Guaranteed.
Okay.
Well, he's no quitter.
This would be a good time for a man.
Oh, it sure would.
Yeah.
Nice little raptors.
I mean, I'm certain the plan is still some sort of discover weaponized pinata shenanigans. Continue to go for random effects positively happening to that augmented Elec. Give the man something.
hunterace did have one last Hail Mary up his sleeve after that brawl gave him pretty much the worst possible outcome with the corner sentry mind control tech. I pointed out the possibilities of corner sentry with brawl earlier on, but hunterace, having just drawn that mind control tech, I believe last card in his deck, threw it out there as just a final gambit to try and get some kind of board presence, but surely he knows how much gas there is still to come from Silvors. What's your plan, bud? Because I don't see it.
Well, it's not the bulldozer. I'm convinced there's something here.
There's got to be a defile here.
There's got to be a defile here. Super Collider is basically just big defile.
Yeah.
There's the one. Oh. Up. 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 Well, they just keep going.
They sure do.
This, yeah.
You know what's really fun that I'm sure we're going to see at some point this weekend is mass hysteria and secret interactions.
Oh. The Microsoft came back.
Sure.
Come on. Oh!
Sure. Tell me more.
He's not dead. Look. He's going for the other one. He says, this is how I gotta win, so be it.
You just have to somehow mind control tech one of those rush boys
Dynomatic?
every turn for the rest of the game.
Hey, that's not the
With
toughest.
one more
Oh,
mind control
come on. Big deal. He's got to fight through, 76 more mana of Lifesteal Rush minions. I'm feeling it.
All right. Admirable is taking the hunterace side of this fight.
I'm making a stand. You taught me this earlier. I don't have a problem making a stand, something you never have to remind me of. Just chuck an axe.
I mean, we haven't even talked about the fact that there's a 10-mana stealth Tundra Rhino in Silvor's hand that he still has up his sleeve.
Don't.
He can then charge 2 of those assembled monstrosity zombies on the following turn behind that.
No. Don't let that distract you from the fact that Amnesiac blew a 3-0 lead in the 2016 World Championships, okay? Don't worry about that Tundra Rhino right
My
now.
thought process, you started that sentence, I knew it was going to end, and I thought, there's no way he's just going to drop this out of contact in the middle of nowhere.
Silvors ties it up after a grueling game number 2. Yes, that's right, game number 2.
Yeah,
we still got at least 2 more to go in this set, but a point on the board for Silvors, and hunterace back to the drawing board. It's looking like a lot of matchups this weekend could be ending up that way. There's quite a few odd warriors that are in the field today. I would say that of all the playoffs, this is the one where it's really shown up and, threatening to really be a force in this tournament.
23 of them, in fact, in total, which is, just over a quarter of the field, but in terms of Odd Warrior players, that's a big number. Not many people like to bring Odd Warrior to tournaments for a variety of reasons. In the past, it's been a lot of people's perception of the deck's strength overall, but also it becomes such a huge fatigue issue, like IRL fatigue issue when you play days as long as these playoff days are. A lot of people just don't want to subject themselves to that, where they have to play Odd Warrior games over and over and over again for 10+ hours sometimes. So it's not something that we see people bring unless it's a very, very powerful deck. So I think 23 out of 80 is actually a big indicator of where it stands.
Like, take a look at that game from hunterace. He was unwilling to give that one up. the entirety of the time. If that's the way that all of your Odd Warrior opponents are going to play, you're going to have a long tournament.
Yep.
That's just the way it's going to boil down. You're looking at 6 rounds today, a 7th round tomorrow, and then a dual tournament group stage if you happen to make that top 8 cut.
That's just the Odd Warrior code. If you're going to bring Odd Warrior to a tournament, you actually have to sign a covenant with the other Odd Warrior players that you never concede. You know, the philosophy and ethos is that if you have to torture yourself by playing Odd Warrior, you also torture every opponent that you come up against.
It's the branded iron on. You're now born of fire and steel.
Yes.
We got a Mind Blast / Control / Dragon Priest, whatever you want to call it, from Hunter Ace's side. It's taking on the Big Mage from Silvors, and this is a matchup I am still a bit torn on. I have a soft spot in my heart for Big Mage, mostly because of the name.
Okay, yeah.
But also because it's just such a unique deck to me, where, you know, when you think of Mage, one of the first things that a lot of players think about is Frostbolts and Fireballs and secrets that are disrupting your opponent, and a very swift and agile style of attack that has a big burn package as a finisher. And this is about the antithesis as you can get of that deck in general. There are no Frostbolts. There are no Fireballs. You actually don't have a single card in your deck that deals direct damage to your opponent unless you count the Jaina hero power. Just a very unique style to me, and I love it. I mean, you mentioned I was an Odd Warrior player.
Yeah.
This is as close to Odd Warrior as I get when I'm not playing Odd Warrior.
I'm slowly realizing already that we are very different people.
What's your take on this matchup, though? I've always been kind of, again, back and forth. I feel like, you know, Silvors, the right key cards can really change the matchup for him.
I think it's relatively even. I don't know how Silvor's particular build functions, because it is a bit more minion-centric than I'm used to seeing. I think that's, you know, somewhat down to how I had little Big Mage experience in the current meta, since cards like Astromancer and so on have come into the deck, and of course we're seeing Corpse Taker being played as well. But it's very hard for the Priest player to build up any kind of consistent OTK strategy if there is a Jaina draw from the Mage player. So it does come down to chip damage a lot of the time, whether you can get some of that in with minion pressure. And that's very, very difficult to do, because that's exactly what your opponent's deck in the Big Mage is designed to prevent people from doing, is building a board and getting in chip damage with minions.
I think it's one of the key facets. If the Priest is able to attack you with minions, you are generally losing if you're playing against the Dragon / Mind Blast / Control Priest. By the way, can you tell me what name to call this? Because I know that you're big on that sort of thing, and it's all 3 of those things mushed together. Hybrid Priest, you got it. Just kidding.
Let's go with it. I'm fine. I'm still trying to grab the title of official Hearthstone community deck namer. Would you like to be assistant deck namer? No, you can be assistant to the deck namer.
There we go.
Yeah.
Job's accepted. And now, name please, sire.
As an initiation process, I'm actually going to pass this one over to my assistant to the deck namer.
I'm just going to call it Dragon Priest.
Sweet. All right, glad we got that one solved
Job's
quickly
done.
and efficiently.
There must be a way.
I'm going to need a raise, by the way.
We can talk about that later at your performance review.
This, to me, is the wackiest minion in the deck. The Stone Basilisk.
It's something that I've seen once or twice
Stone
get floated.
Skin Basilisk,
yeah,
sorry.
Get floated coming into tournament lists, and it's one of those cards where you'll see one group of players on Twitter ridiculing people for putting it in their deck, and then one group of players ridiculing everyone else for not putting it in their deck. It's really one of those opinion dividers.
Yeah, for me, it's like, seems like an okay choice. Pretty decent against even Warlock. Fuels your Corpse Taker with Divine Shield. Seems like an okay minion to include. I'm not much of a ridiculer when it comes to single tech card choices. But as someone with a lot of experience ridiculing, what's your stance on it?
I'm actually okay with it. Again, like, take all of my opinions on Big Mage with a pinch of salt, because it's one of the decks I have the least experience with in general. I'm not a huge Odd Warrior player, but I have immensely more Odd Warrior experience than I do Big Mage, because I actually cannot subject myself to this. But when I just look at what it does, It makes sense to me. It is just, you know, another voodoo doll-like effect, which a lot of the time is one of the strongest tools that you do have in your deck, in that it's a minion that challenges just about anything, and it's also something that you can use for an additional effect, which is because it has 1 health, yes, it's behind Divine Shield, it then becomes a self-Jaina target later in the game. If you can then stick it to the board, trade off into something, and then ping it off yourself. Like, that's the dream, right?
Acolyte comes down alongside just for the single card.
Hunterace going fishing.
Well, I'm surprised by that. I mean, I'm looking at Wild Pyromancer, I'm looking at Divine Spirit, you know, I'm looking at potentially way more cards from an Acolyte. Perhaps he doesn't want to draw that many cards.
I'm also looking at Wild Pyromancer costing 2 mana, and there's a Shadow Reaper Anduin in hand, and 2 mana cards line up very, very nicely in terms of chipping away damage with the Shadow Reaper Anduin hero power.
Amen. Copy of Holy Fire you can see in Hunterace's hand as well. A card that I have been a big fan of in my time playing Dragon Priest.
Oh, yes.
Just extra 5 damage burn.
Yeah.
Just feels good.
It gives you, like, freeze mage-y turns where you can just sometimes set it up, and it's functioning as your ice block, right? It's a turn where freeze mage would used to go ice block, throw burn at you. Holy Fire is kind of doing a very bootleg budget version of that effect, where it's dealing some damage and pulling you out of range of being able to die on the following turn simultaneously.
Bootlegged ice blocks,
yeah,
I think is my favorite Hearthstone terminology that I've heard ever.
Yeah. I mean, when you send all these cards crashing away into the Hall of Fame, you just create a black market, right, for these knockoff ice block effects. What are you buying?
Yeah, Timeout was like the second alternate smartphone there. It's still a pretty functioning card in its own right. But
yeah.
Holy Fire, whew, that's your bootlegged ice block for you right there.
It's just one of those backpacks that you can buy in like various Asian countries that just has 6 different anime characters just slammed on there in one go. Just Pokemon spelled wrong.
P-O-K-A.
Yeah.
Did he reach for Psychic Scream? Is that what he just did? He had to have grabbed the wrong. If that's what I saw, that had to just been the wrong
That is what you
card
saw,
grab.
but yeah, there are various explanations for that. One of which is he wanted to play Psychic Scream for a minute. I feel like that one's unlikely, though.
Yeah, to me, that's a bluff potential right there. No Jaina. One of the major facets of winning this game. To me, though, I do want to talk about Arcane Artificer for a second in this matchup.
Okay.
I hate when I see players use it. It's a card that I want to see stay in hand until post Alexstrasza. You need to punish an Alexstrasza turn with double Arcane Artificer. I think it's super vital. I think it's super important. And in this matchup, unless you are going to die otherwise if you don't play an Arcane Artificer, by golly, do not use it until you have to.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I want to clarify, obviously, like, Arcane Artificer is armor and Alexstrasza is health, but, like, the point you're trying to make is you want to use them when you've gained control of the board. You don't want to play them gain armor and then, like, minions keep chipping away at you, right? Like, once you've hit that stage of the game where Hunterace has signaled its burn plan time, here is my Alexstrasza, here's my Shadow Reaper Anduin, that's when you want to gain the armor, because that's when you're pretty confident that you're not taking damage from minions anymore.
Right, there are times when you can use it ahead of time, but that's really the key facet that Saddle just mentioned. Until you've got control of the board, because that armor will get chipped away.
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier, when the priest can attack you with minions, that's typically when you're losing. So step number 1, don't get attacked by minions in the matchup. Step number 2, save your Arcane Artificer until you've got that handled. Because that Shadow Reaper Anduin, I mean, there's 15 cards left in deck. There's 8 cards still in Hunterace's hand. There is a long way to go to get through that much damage that Shadow Reaper Anduin is going to crank out. And Emrys, that's a major deal.
Hello.
For 2 reasons. Number 1, you don't necessarily want to use it while you have Voodoo Doll in your hand, but number 2, your Calamos, your Astromancer, all those things, you know, even your Arcane Artificer, that suddenly takes 2 hero powers from Hunterace to sink into it.
Right.
That's an interesting card.
That is a spicy boy.
Hunterace just starts the burn.
He just goes, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You just Holy Fire him. You just get him.
Bootleg Ice Block.
Yeah.
But it worked exactly as intended. He doesn't die this turn.
Exactly.
So does HunterAce have no interest in perhaps playing any more minions because he saw a Rotten Apple Bow here? He just goes, man, I'll just start the burn plan. Why play a minion and kill off this Rotten Apple Bow and give my opponent extra health?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think it's also just very much what his hand does, right? Just setting up the burn plan, using the Holy Fire while he's free to do so. If he does need to buy the additional turns, he can continue to do so. But yeah, he's really not that far off with 2 Mind Blasts in hand. That's 10, and there's enough mana remaining for 3 hero powers. It's 16 just with the Mind Blasts available right now.
And Silvors, he's going to have to find a way to giddy up.
Reality.
And I think this is a
Wow.
fine. I think this is a fine turn for it. He's really fearing the potential that HunterAce just starts a burn package right away. And so because of that, he goes for Arcane Artificer rather than play Emerus and try to, apply pressure back. I think that's smart, because if there's 2 Mind Blasts in HunterAce's hand, things are going to get dicey real quick if you don't take care of your life total.
I think, is there a Shadow Visions card in HunterAce's hand right now?
Divine Spirit, I believe it is.
Divine Hymn, you mean?
Divine Hymn, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
So in that case, if there is a card present, then Silvors is entitled to give credit to 19 as the possible reach from HunterAce's hand, which I think gives him more explanation. And also with the addition of the Calamos, which I'm now seeing is active, playing an Elemental on the previous turn makes a lot of sense as well. But I do want to advocate for the idea of just getting a move on here, because getting small amounts of heal turn after turn doesn't achieve a great deal if you're not simultaneously putting on pressure. HunterAce is going through the wars right now in terms of his emotions, but the point I was trying to make is that if he's not setting up some kind of pressure of his own, then HunterAce just has an infinite time just to chip and pressure this back down again.
Those are 2 of the worst draws he could have picked up back-to-back. I mean, there's no dragon in hand to utilize with these Twilight Acolytes. You saw HunterAce deviate on the previous turn.
It was last turn, and HunterAce threw out that Primordial Drake.
But, something I want to talk about is that HunterAce, I think the Primordial Drake was smart. He just saw Silvors heal and went, you know what, I'm going to slow down and back up. My opponent has just taken defensive stance. Let me change my angle of attack for a bit until I find a new opening.
Yeah.
That new opening is not there after the Calamos hits. Like, now HunterAce is prioritizing finding Alexstrasza to be a big deal. And so that Primordial Drake coming down and picking up back-to-back Twilight Acolytes, massive detriment for HunterAce's side. You don't want to Psychic Scream this Calamos back in your opponent's deck. The Calamos is challenging the Primordial Drake directly. Your opponent's got a huge hand where now Emrys on a Ziliax hits.
Ooh.
This is looking like Silvors may have turned a big corner here because of what Syndragosa provides.
And that's something that I think perhaps we didn't give enough service to as well with this Emrys play, is we were getting so excited about the implications of the cards that he had in hand, we didn't even think about the upside of just saying, hey, what if we hold on to it because we have other cards in our deck that can give us huge abilities with to swing the state of the game like Ziliax.
And I threw a shot at Amnesiac earlier, but I'm going to shout him out here real quick. He clarified how to play Rogue to me very clearly one day when he said to me, you don't just play with the cards in your hand, you play with the cards in your deck. And I don't know why that was so hard for me to grasp in terms of simple words before, but it really was. And when he said that to me, my Rogue play just immediately improved. And I was doing that sort of, but when it actively became a thought, I just became a better player. So thank you, Amnesiac.
I do love when you tell that story, because I just kind of sit here and go, yeah, that's card games. That's how they work.
Yeah. 16-year-old Amnesiac put that together, and me 20 years later, I'm like, nah, you play the big thing and hit him.
I mean, that works a lot of the time in Hearthstone.
Well, yeah. In card games, let's put it that way.
Sure.
If you deal them damage, eventually they die.
Yes. So then they have less health. And if they have less health than they did before, they're going in the right direction, which is towards 0. Twilight Drake, huge pickup though for HunterAce. We maligned his lack of dragon on the previous turn, so picking one up there is pretty clutch. With a deck that some people who aren't part of the official deck naming committee are calling Dragon Priest.
Well, I was assistant to the...
I'm trying to tell you you've been fired, but...
Oh, God!
Yeah, sorry. It was hardly surprising that HunterAce was going to pick up a dragon off the top. I think he still had multiple options to get himself out of it.
I thought you were going to say it was hardly surprising that I got fired this quick.
Observe and reflect.
Both of which are accurate. And now suddenly the Voodoo Doll is being buffed by Emrys. It's not the smallest deal in the world.
Yeah.
You can't ping them off anymore. They are now 2/2s thanks to that full hand buff.
Observe and
How weird is that?
reflect.
My minion got better, and as a result, it got worse.
Yes.
That's very similar to the Twilight Acolytes that I saw in WSOE. It got buffed by a Surrender to Madness from the 2-mana Witch Doctor that makes a random priest spell.
Right.
And because it buffed Twilight Acolyte, the player couldn't Twilight Acolyte and then steal with Cabal Shadow Priest because it had 4 attack after
Oh,
Surrender to Madness.
yeah, okay.
It's funny how these tricky control decks work.
Yeah.
Don't you dare buff a minion.
Is someone injured?
Prior to anything. Oh, Divine Him. So now Hunterace is very interested in just aggressively drawing.
Yes.
So it's looking at double Divine Him in that case. 4 extra cards coming. Does activate the Voodoo Doll, however.
Yeah, I think that's a situation he's probably fine with, though.
Just come to terms with it.
Yeah, because now Hunterace is in a spot where he's essentially racing himself against the Frostlich Jaina for Silvors, at least in his mind. Like, Hunterace doesn't know that there is a stat-doubled Ziliax in hand right now that can function as healing for Silvors. But even then, that's something he can play around by not leaving minions in play and then, you know, Psychic Screaming it away when it does come down. But what Hunterace is trying to do is get himself to a damage win condition before Silvors finds that Frostlich Jaina, which really forces him out of the game. And yes, I know, Admirable, it's a Reckless Rocketeer.
In rehearsal yesterday, when we were going over the games, a Reckless Rocketeer showed up, and Sottle and I talked about it for way too long.
We did.
And now it's just, everything from rehearsal is happening right now. Like, am I in the same spot? Is this a dream right now? Is this the real world?
It's just Groundhog Day. We didn't actually go to sleep and wake up.
Am I Bill Murray, or is it you?
Actually, if you think about it, we did go to sleep and then wake up, and it was the same day.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I'm freaking out.
Okay.
Do you ever feel pressured to Psychic Scream your opponent's Reckless Rocketeer back into their deck?
Can't say that I have, no.
Hunterace down to 4 cards. Alexstrasza still hasn't shown up. That's the key card. He has to draw that to win the game right now.
Yeah, and while you were guffawing like a buffoon at the Reckless Rocketeers, the point I was trying to get to is that he's really digging for that Alexstrasza, right? Because Hunterace knows that if Silvors gets to his Jaina here, any real plan of him burning him out is going to go downhill quite quickly, because in that scenario, you have to spend all your time like Psychic Screaming away all of these water elementals so they can't continue healing. So Hunterace was really trying to find his Alexstrasza first so he can just giddy up and get going. But Silvors kind of had that beat anyway with the healing of the Ziliax coming through afterwards. So I respect Hunterace's play to just go digging as hard as he can. But yeah, that Jaina means that he is in a great deal of trouble now.
Now, 2 things to me. Number 1, there's still enough cards in Silvor's deck that it's difficult for him to just redraw elementals and make a big impact. Number 2, the Psychic Scream here is coming out anyway because there's still no Alexstrasza for Hunterace.
Yep.
Number 3, he can't make a water elemental with anything that's in hand right now.
No, yeah, number 3, he doubled the health of his Voodoo Doll.
This game is wacky.
Yeah.
Like,
I do have some experience with weird Emorys board states, because it actually, when you played against Priest with Spiteful Druid, it was actually the best outcome to get from the your Spiteful Summoner, because it then got Psychic Scream back into your deck, and you then drew it, because that was like their one answer for it at the time. So I've actually played quite a few games with like Emorys doubling stats in hand.
oh my gosh, Alexstrasza is the last card.
Double check it's in the deck. Yes, it is.
No, it is. You actually, I think, even looked at the Silvors list, but yeah,
No,
it's
I did.
there.
No, I looked.
Okay, I mean, it's Dragon Priest. That's how you know there's an Alexstrasza.
It's a dragon,
Yeah,
and it lowers your opponent's health to 15.
that's not very much left.
No.
Let me change your mind.
With 2 Mind Blasts and some Hero Powers, you can do more than that. This makes sense. I think this might have some legs, this Alexstrasza and Dragon
Silvor's
Priest plan.
face, too. He's like, oh, Alexstrasza the last card, huh? Okay. Guess I'll have a big board going into your Alexstrasza turn. By the way, Ziliax is twice as big. By the way, I make a water elemental. If Alexstrasza was the previous turn, I think Hunterace had some hope. The fact that it's the last card, it feels like that dwindles so much as a result.
And now Alex coming down on a turn where there is a water elemental, if it is played here, which means immediate healing from the water elemental, more healing from the Ziliax that's coming out.
The 2 chip damage to me spells why he would make this Alexstrasza play instead of the Psychic Scream.
Sure.
But Silvors has got the goods.
And hunterace, his face has painted 1,000 pictures so far, and there it is again. I don't need words. hunterace just spelled it out all for you what that doubled Ziliax means. And Silvors, again, got very greedy with his Emerus activation until he drew that Ziliax. Ended up paying out big for him.
I feel like the arrows on Silvor's side have even become more decisive and quick. Like, just kind of watching the nuance of the animation.
Right.
It feels like they're, like, very aggressive and pointed. And I don't know how or when that happened. But the animation feels like it's just very aggressive now for whatever reason. Like, oh, you gonna deal me damage, huh, bud? He's like just poking him. That classic movie standoff.
Thoughts.
I don't know how hunterace gets out of this one.
Sorry, what movies have you been watching where people just poke each other?
You know.
Oh, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Darkness.
So you were on Team hunterace last game in his dire-looking position.
Hey,
how do you feel this time?
I'm not giving up. I'm giving up. I'm seeing the Arcane Artificer.
My calculations are flawless.
Oh!
Wow.
Yeah, no, Casper, this time I'm with you.
Take a deep breath.
I'm with you, mate.
Stay calm.
That one hurts.
Stay calm. Big deal. It makes 2 more water elementals.
Yep.
Everything's fine. Surrounded by fire. It's okay.
Cup of coffee. Also, you're a dog. Wow, that was a brutal outcome from an Astromancer. And again, it's been such a weird topsy-turvy game without the deck itself being included, where it's just like, what a weird outcome when doubling the health of your minion was actually bad for you in the case of the Voodoo Doll, while still being fantastic for the Ziliax. What a weird game when a 5-1 as the outcome from one of your big 7-drop bombs was actually the best possible outcome you could have had in the situation.
What a weird game when Alexstrasza is the very last card as the Priest player, when it's a card in this matchup where you're likely to keep it in the mulligan of your opening hand.
Yeah.
hunterace drew so aggressively in the mid stages of the game, was foregoing damage, hunting down that one specific card. He's no quitter. The Artificer's there, though.
Yep.
And you could see from the animations on the client, that happened before we got a visual of it.
And hey, guess what? In case you haven't realized, hunterace, that 5-1 he made last turn, there's a lot more water elementals that the residual effects of that death rattle are going to create now for Silvors. You're in a mess. This is a concede turn if I've ever seen one, and there it is from hunterace. Silvors is going to go up to a 2-1 lead here. hunterace has been letting his emotions, or wearing his emotions on his sleeve throughout this series, and you can't blame him for some of the outcomes that he's had to come up against.
I don't disagree with you. However, I feel like Silvors has been piloting his spots extremely well. The opportunities he's been given, the situations that he's been in, trying to make the most of those situations is really what separates, I think, the elite from the rest of the pack who are chasing them down. And I think Silvors is very much demonstrating that with just very clean, solid play across the board. And when he's presented with an opportunity that something clever happens, making the most of it. You know, some of the chuckles and stuff you've seen on his face, he's getting ideal outcomes from positive otherwise situations. And that's really kind of what rubs the salt in the wound, where you're like, I'm pretty sure I was going to win here anyway, but this is just fantastic. How much better could it possibly get?
Not much. And I guess like now with Silvors in a 2-1 lead, it's a good time to give you some background about this player who's now 1 game away of defeating hunterace and going to a 3-1 lead. He was a top 8 competitor at Europe Full Playoffs in 2018. But apart from that, we give these players a survey to fill out to give us some information so we can, fill you guys in at home on situations like this of players you might not heard of. Silvors neglected to fill that survey out and give us any information. So you know what? I'm going to neglect to give people any information about you.
And that's because we're just about out of time here. We're going to get into game number 4 right away, but we got to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to see how this series concludes. Silvors up 2-1 over HunterAce. Don't go anywhere.
Well played!
In this video, we're going to take a look at one of the most memorable moments from the 2018 Hearthstone Championship Tour in Germany. We'll follow the face-off between two of Hearthstone's hottest pros, Psycho and Casey. By analyzing one of their matches, hopefully you'll pick up a few tips to get ready to compete in a Hearthstone Championship Tour stop of your own. Let's jump right into Game 4 of the group stage match between Casey's signature Miracle Rogue up against Psycho's tried and true Malygos Druid. We'll pick things up on turn 6. And yeah, it's really turn 6. Psycho already has 10 mana thanks to 2 Nourishes, and he's holding double Ultimate Infestation in hand. But Casey has an enormous lead on the board. So if Psycho uses Ultimate Infestation on any of the 4 attack minions, he's going to go up to 21 total life. And Casey's only going to have 20 damage showing on the board, including his dagger. So surely, Psycho's just going to play the Ultimate Infestation to draw more cards and hopefully find a way to deal with Casey's board on the following turn. Right? Well, not quite. Psycho's abilities are truly being tested here. Most players would pull the trigger on Ultimate Infestation, hoping that their opponent doesn't have Shiv or Eviscerate. But Psycho spots a different line, playing Spreading Plague and Branching Paths for +2 attack? What? But Psycho knows that it's foolish to hope for no damage in hand against a Miracle Rogue with 4 cards. He needs to set up for a big swipe to clear the board. Spreading Plague plus Branching Paths guarantees Casey's minions will be at 1 health after trading, and as an additional benefit, Branching Paths protect Psycho's minions from a worst case scenario Mossy Horror, which Casey actually does have in hand. Psycho plays to this narrow out and gets rewarded with a top-decked swipe. Now, he can full clear the board with a single spell, and lock out the game from an almost unwinnable situation. In Hearthstone, you don't just play with the cards in your hand, you're also playing with the cards in your deck. Even though Ultimate Infestation was extremely tempting with the information Psycho had, he correctly foresaw the better line of setting up a full clear with Spreading Plague into a top deck swipe, swinging the match as a result. Congratulations to both pros for such awesome Hearthstone and showcasing the high level skills required of HCT competitors. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, brought to you by the coaches at GamerSensei, please visit playhearthstone.com/esports for more of the Well Played series and all things Hearthstone esports.
Well played!
Welcome back to the Hearthstone Championship Tour European Playoffs. We're amidst round 1 coverage here, and it has been a grueling series thus far. Silvors leads 2-1 over HunterAce, who still has to get through a win with Odd Warrior and with his own Dragon Priest. And he's facing off against the Dragon Priest of Silvors. Soddle, he's going for the tough matchup first.
Ooh, we were talking about this very subject in the break. I mean, like, first things first, like, statistically, in terms of what's actually going to happen in the eventuality in the series, like, it doesn't matter. It's just a mental thing for HunterAce as to what he wants to do. Essentially, he has Odd Warrior in his back pocket still, which is the decision point for him as to whether he wants to just play that matchup out and grind it out and then play the mirror afterwards. But HunterAce has just chosen to go straight in with the mirror match, which is, you'd have to say, the slightly more difficult of the 2 matchups.
And I'm looking at HunterAce's face right now.
He's nervous, but on the surface, he looks calm and ready.
Yeah. His arms just look like arms, though.
Yeah. There is little pasta involved right now. I've started saying pasta. My wife makes fun of me for it. We say pasta in the UK, and I've started saying pasta for some reason.
Well, I would make fun of you said pasta.
I know. I think that's why.
It's like saying pagel. How big of the difference is a coin in this matchup? I guess that's really one of the facets I want to talk about. You know, I've heard a lot of... There's some matchups where it goes back and forth. Sometimes the coin's a benefit, sometimes it's not. Is this matchup one of them?
I like going first. I will confess that I don't actually know what the data says in terms of who wins the mirror in terms of win rate on coin, which is usually a pretty big deal. But for me, we've talked a lot about the impotence, that's not the word I meant, the impetus of minions in this matchup and how important chip damage is, right? Because that really sets the stall out for which player is ahead. So if you're going first, a lot of the time you're going to be the player that's actually playing minions with initiative and actually choosing whether you want to trade or deal damage to face. And I think that is a positive position for you to be in the mirror match. You look like you disagree.
No, I'm just curious. There's some quite aggressive things happening in play right now.
Okay.
A lot of times in my experience this matchup, Twilight Acolyte is a premium style of card. I guess the Twilight Drake early does prompt a response though. I mean, that is not a... It's not a small, tiny little thing you're looking at. It's a 4/7 Drake. It's going to start dealing a lot of damage. I would say one of the big facets in this matchup is being able to not use Alexstrasza and have to cede that tempo advantage over to your opponent. You know, so often in this matchup, I have felt the dance going back and forth where it's one player wants to use Alexstrasza, but the other player hasn't used Shadow Reaper Anduin yet. So you kind of start looking at that and you go, yeah, this might slip away from me if I go ahead and use this right away.
And you talk about dance back and forth. I think that exchange of the Acolytes was exactly a dance back and forth around this card, Cabal Shadow Priest. Because Hunterace just went, hey, sick, I play this out, I coin Cabal, I steal his 2/7 Drake. So Silvors in response said, well, I can beat that play with my Duskbreaker if I put a 4/4 on the board this turn, which the only way he could do that was to play his own Twilight Acolyte to counter the one that Hunterace played. So the reason these last 2 or 3 turns have been the fastest turns that you've seen throughout the whole series is that both of these players knew exactly what was going to happen on each of those turns 3 turns ago.
And I feel like Hunterace got the edge on that one, too.
I do too.
Now, I say that right as we go into Northshire Cleric, Wild Pyromancer, Power Word Shield, blow up your 4/1, draw an extra card, by the way.
The by the way is the most important part of the name of that turn, by the way.
Dragon picked up for second Duskbreaker availability here as well.
Big deal.
Yeah, you don't leave Northshire Clerics around too long. Card draw in this matchup feels so paramount to me that it seems like in my time playing it and my time watching it, players have gone to the ends of the earth to go, I get to draw a card.
Yes. That's my kind of jam. I love drawing cards.
There's 2 things I like in Hearthstone. Number 1 is drawing cards. Number 2 is when my minions kill something and stay alive. That's why I like Odd Warrior so much.
What about hitting face?
I like it. I very enjoy it. But what I really like are those 2 facets.
Okay.
If I'm going to play the other ones, I want to get them over quickly enough that I can get back to doing the 2 things that I love. Drawing extra cards or having a minion that kills something and stays alive.
So if I start talking about like commanding shout Acolyte of Pain style turns where you then trade the Acolyte and it's still alive because it's still undying. Like, will you get too excited?
You've got to slow down.
Okay, yeah.
If you're going to talk to me that way, you got to ask me on a date, okay?
Fair enough.
Is someone injured?
Speaking of drawing extra cards. And the Fire Tree Witch Doctor.
Yep.
And this is a card that I feel like is a hot topic of the deck right now. Should or should this not be in here?
Agreed. And I am actually, for once, fairly on the fence about it. I've tried it, and it seemed like a fine but reasonably mediocre card in the deck. And for me, like, what makes it a card that I'm on the fence about is, to me, it's either, like, it's somewhere around, like, the 27th to 30th worst card in the deck, right? So if you're looking to cut a card to make room for something else, it either is that card or it's very close to being that card. That's what I mean by being on the fence about it. It turns out like Silvors and Hunterace are both choosing to include it here, or Hunterace is not?
Hunterace has not included it. Silvors has.
Okay.
And I feel like in this matchup, it does provide a big difference. You know, Mass Dispel has largely rotated out of the deck because you don't have to worry about level up turns from your opponent anymore.
That's true.
There's not as much nonsense going on where you need to push through Spreading Plague in order to cede some of that damage anymore. And so because of that, Mass Dispel really has gone out of the deck, but one of the important facets of it is just in the mirror match, being able to use it and push your minions. It means that minions require attention more often than not.
Right.
When it's not in the open deck list, that's a card Hunterace, I think, is very unwilling to play around most of the time. As this Northshire Cleric just can't make up its mind.
Let me change your mind.
Priest mirrors, just real goofy sometimes. I think Silvors, again, it's another one of those back and forth exchanges that I was talking about before, except this time Silvors coming out on top. And again, I think he was aware of this eventuality because he could have chosen, I believe, to trade off his Northshire Cleric on the previous turn and decided not to. But then he was safe in the knowledge that he can Cabal Shadow Priest the Northshire Cleric back. But now, Hunterace finding a potential punish here where not only is he drawing a huge number of cards, he's burning a huge number of cards from Silvors.
So 3 cards getting drawn for Silvors here for having Northshire Cleric. 3 cards for Hunterace where he finds Shadow Reaper Anduin. And there's none of the big keys in Silvors' hand right now. Alexstrasza is still there. Shadow Reaper Anduin's still there.
Divine Hymn gets burned. That is a good card in the matchup. It's a big swing in terms of health and card draw potential, but it's not a vital piece. That hurts.
Shadow Visions is important,
yeah,
but it's not crucial. The whole deck still functions as a whole right now.
It's just a little Discover effect. It's still good. Still good.
Now, the other question I'm saying is, can Silvors do the same thing right back to Hunterace? Is there a way that he can perhaps force card draws? I'm looking at the Shadow Visions in hand. Is this ever a risk that you want to take? You know, at this point, Hunterace, if he's willing to take that many card draws, to me, it says to Silvors, I have key pieces in my hand. Overdrawing and burning is unlikely, and it might be, you know, a virtual impossibility given the situation. Would Hunterace risk this happening if he could burn key cards?
Silvors just going again. And I think, honestly, I think he's entitled to do this. He hasn't lost any crucial pieces to those burns. There is now the Shadow Reaper Anduin, and he is ahead in his deck with, you know, 10 cards to 11 now being drawn. So I think he is entitled just to keep functioning as normal and just draw from his own deck as opposed to needing to panic and do anything to Hunterace. Hunterace on his turn had like that double upside of having that huge turn where he drew a bunch of cards, his opponent burned a bunch of cards, and I believe he started that turn off like behind in the card draw race. So he felt like he was behind in the situation. I don't think Silvors has to look for any kind of play like that because he is ahead in card draw at the moment. So on average, should be ahead in terms of progressing through some kind of Shadow Reaper Anduin game plan.
Do you like to play with fire?
Round 2.
Is someone injured?
Hunterace just back to the well. He's going to go fishing yet again. There is Divine Hymn yet again. And Silvors now has a very high chance of saying goodbye to a Mind Blast here.
Mind Blast, Alexstrasza. Those are big ones. Wild Pyromancer not. And Hunterace says, let's run it back. 2 more. Alex is burned. The board is wiped. Hunterace is at 30, clear skies, Alexstrasza gone. That feels like a winning setup.
The difference in reaction from these two players when they face adversity, it's starting to come out a little bit now from Silvors. Just a little bit of a panicked face just came out then. But he's been very, very stoic, apart from those kind of occasional smiles that you were mentioning earlier throughout this matchup, whereas Hunterace been emotive throughout. But that was a dramatic turn from Hunterace, which all but shattered Silvors' hopes in this matchup. You have to ask the question, has he been overextending in terms of clerics on the board? Well, do you have to play around your opponent having Cleric Pyro Shadow Visions into Divine Hymn twice?
Well, to me, that's an important facet of it. Is Hunterace, I think, has had opportunity to use Northshire Clerics and has chosen not to.
Okay.
Instead, he's held them for those key turns. He's looked specifically for turns where Silvors had his own Northshire Cleric, lots of cards in hand, and then Hunterace would rapidly cycle through his Northshire Cleric, Wild Pyromancer, and spells with a Divine Hymn in order to create this double-edged effect where he's drawing cards, and his opponent is burning cards at the same time.
Right.
I think back to the famous Orange versus Surrender play in the Summer Championships, where Orange took a very aggressive and risky line trying to burn a number of cards from Surrender, only to have it be a benefit to him at the end because the key cards were so deep in Surrender's deck.
Yeah.
In this situation, HunterAce is accomplishing two things at the same time with that style of play. It's gotten a payoff for him, and now he's immensely ahead. It wasn't just as simple as Northshire Cleric can draw cards, it was save Northshire Cleric until I get the super powerful effect from it. Silvors now Psychic Screaming back minions into HunterAce's deck, just hoping that he delays the Alexstrasza at this point. He knows he doesn't have his own. How on earth does he win the Fatigue race? It's not going to happen. I cannot believe how favored of position HunterAce got into in back-to-back turns of basically just drawing cards and dealing 1 damage to the board at a time.
Yeah. And Admirable, don't get too excited, but if you think about it, on those turns, he drew a bunch of cards, and he also cleared his opponent's board and kept his alive.
The double.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I'm happy with the single.
I don't know about this kind of stalling tactics now from Silvors. Like, I was on board with the Psychic Scream turns. I believe he's had back-to-back Psychic Scream turns from this position.
Not steal.
It has to be, surely. Go for the dream.
You could.
You're only young once. Oh!
So the Seance had merit there as well. Your opponent plays Alexstrasza. You Seance the Alexstrasza, Shadow Reaper Ando in. Can you heal up afterwards?
That is a great point.
That is a weird situation to be in.
Yeah.
Now I'm just wondering if Seance could even just be a tech card for the mirror match. Just that exact sequence. Probably not. In practice, it sounds great in theory, but when you start doing it, you're probably just going to end up with a Seance in your hand a lot. But I'll tell you what, when luck shuts the door, you got to open up the window, and Silvors needs some massive help.
He tried. He opened up 2 windows, and an Acolyte of Pain and a Twilight Drake climbed in through them.
Ah! Oh, they're friendly. They're just here to hang out.
Yeah. They've just had a long night. They've forgotten how doors work. It's fine.
We all have those friends.
Yeah.
Hey, speak to me.
Mine's named John.
I said it earlier, too, when the priest starts to attack you with the minions rather than your minions with the minions.
Oh, yes.
Trouble's brewing.
Meddlesome insects.
Nice little turn here for Silvors.
But again, I didn't really finish this train of thought earlier where I was okay with the Psychic Scream turns on back-to-back turns. But from that point onwards, I feel like the delaying of the Shadow Reaper Anduin and just starting to deal damage with these cards that are in hand, right? Because every card he now plays while not in Shadow Reaper Anduin form is 2 damage down the drain. It's a hero power recycle that he does not get to do when he has to deal 30 damage to his opponent.
But that's the importance of HunterAce keeping that aggression high, though.
Yeah.
Is you're prompting an answer from your opponent, and that's what's causing that to happen. Like, you know, Silvors doesn't necessarily have the liberty, I think, of playing it that way. And Silvors, you saw him debate here between the heal self and heal the Wild Pyromancer as well, you know, for fear of Duskbreaker, and here gets rewarded due to HunterAce's draw. But the heal self, even like the minute thing of you're at 23, should I heal me for 2 or protect my minion?
Right.
Is a decision that he has to make. Like, that's not really a thing that comes up too often when you're playing Hearthstone. A lot of it is just ABC fundamental things. And here you're having to dig really deep and look far down the road. Where's the best turn that I get from all of these different actions that can happen in play? This has just been kind of nutso where the players are concerned. They're having to account for so many little things.
Both players packing an Anduin and 3 Mind Blasts stacked up in hand. But HunterAce has board advantage. He has fatigue advantage by an enormous distance as well, currently 5-1, although HunterAce does still have Psychic Screams yet to play, but they're not, you know, you don't get a medal for playing them. You don't have to. You can keep them in hand if you want to.
Just Mind Blast! That's what I'm talking about. See, that's when I want to go face. What the Archbishop Benedictus? We forgot! We forgot to talk about this.
I didn't even notice this was in the deck.
I have a circle around it on the deck list too. I just forgot to mention it. That's the last card, so now Silvors has an Alexstrasza again.
Yes, he does. That's what I was just about to lead into.
Oh, the Alexstrasza's drawn!
Absolutely everything
Whoa, I feel like hunterace certainly is Alexstrasing here. This is 5 extra damage and an 8/8. Or do you not want your opponent to get the tempo of Shadow Reaper Anduin? Is that the downside of using it?
Shadow Reaper Anduin is enormous tempo at this point.
But the Drake is still going to live no matter what in that situation. So you get 8 damage from the Drake and you get 5 from Alexstrasza.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I bring life.
Ooh. He reached for that Anduin for a second, and I was like, well, maybe you forgot Alexstrasza is in your hand. That's the card we've been talking about the whole time. And Silvors, I don't think he comes back from this situation. You know, that Alexstrasza chain, all these other ones have had to dance back and forth. The Alexstrasza, that's the final move of the dance. That's where it starts to end.
The light has betrayed me.
It's coming to the wire though, and that Mind Blast that hunterace threw out, like, weirdly could have ended up being important. You know, with Alexstrasza coming out immediately afterwards, it ends up looking a little bit silly. But with the turns hunterace needs to weave in this Holy Fire and potentially the Mind Blast.
It's game.
Yeah, it's just game. It just ends up being lethal. So you can see why that Mind Blast setup was thrown through immediately. Wow. It does end up that the Alexstrasza did make it a little bit bunk, but the lethal setup without even using the Shadow Reaper Anduin, even with that Archbishop Benedictus, which really changed a lot of the flex points that we were talking about in terms of the fatigue dynamic and the loss of the Alexstrasza. That Archbishop really did change a lot, and it even hyper-focuses in on the idea of why hunterace was so eager to burn cards through that scenario, because the Archbishop Benedictus is a huge deal as well, because that matchup can actually stalemate to a draw position. Like, a lot of the tiles just hit a stalemate position, I should say, where the damage just doesn't build up. Like, one player can stack up Divine Hymns to counter Mind Blasts off their Shadow Visions, and you just get to this position where neither player can really win. In that case, Archbishop Benedictus is just the king tech cards to really break that position. So again, it becomes even clearer why hunterace was really looking to burn away cards from Silvors.
As well as draw them quickly as well.
Yes.
You know, to get those key cards in hand, so that way, if Archbishop Benedictus does hit, your opponent doesn't have access to those key cards as well. I think that is a really interestingly played game where, you know, the open deckless format really transforms the way that you approach a matchup. It's the fact that players have all that information and they have that totality to it. They can craft a plan ahead of time. And I feel like when it comes to these tournaments, and you've watched hunterace over the course of this last year's seasonal cadence, you know, for 2018 and then branching early into 2019, he's one of the best at it. I feel like he makes small deviations from normal looking plays that have huge impact on how the matchup iterates. And that's what you were talking about earlier as well, where hunterace, kind of regardless of what the matchup is, feels confident in crafting a plan, even if it's naturally poor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the first times I really saw this kind of situation is the very, very early days of Twig of the World Tree Malagos Druid. And hunterace was one of the first people that I saw just break their twig and like go Lich King faceless, like make a huge, enormous 20 mana board of minions instead of waiting for that big Malagos play. And that just goes to signal just how ahead of the game he is often. Like, other players learn about matchups from the way hunterace plays them a lot of the time.
And now there's another kicker in play here, where the Archbishop Benedictus versus Odd Warrior comes into play. This is historically a pretty poor matchup for the Dragon Priest player. But that single card leverages the fatigue state now into your advantage.
And overwhelmingly so.
However, there's one thing that can change that in my eyes. I'm looking at Faceless Manipulator and Zola on hunterace's side. If your opponent plays Archbishop Benedictus, you can Faceless Manipulator and Zola it back to your hand.
That is a great point. So now Silvors, having drawn that early, then becomes massively important for him, because he can potentially jam it quite early on if that's something that he wants to do. If he wants to just play a straight-out fatigue strategy against the Odd Warrior and limit hunterace's opportunity to do the same back to him.
I'm curious if there's an opportunity for him to play it and kill it off in the same turn. Like, if, you know, are we going that deep on levels this early on?
Is that even possible for his deck to do?
I'm thinking if there's something you get off of Fire Tree Witch Doctor.
Okay,
so what I'm thinking is like Fire Tree Witch Doctor for... What would take it out, though? I can't think of a Priest card that would do that.
Yeah, because it's a 4/6 and Priest is trying to kill it. The meme has come full circle.
To me, the way would be like, you'd have to have 12 mana. It's Twilight Acolyte and then Shadow Word Pain.
Yeah.
And you get the Shadow Word Pain from your Fire Tree Witch Doctor.
Yeah.
Because it's not in your deck. So, I don't know. I'm really curious about this. You know, also, you know, Fire Tree Witch Doctor providing Seance. in this situation, or even, you know, Shadow Reaper Anduin Light here in the middle. Is that is that a play you're willing to go for early on? My head is starting to churn out some pretty crazy concoctions of scenarios here.
I can actually hear it. I can hear the cogs just clanking away inside Admirable's brain right now.
I feel like the cogs are very thematic given the Mech Warrior thing that's going on here. I'm curious now, because honestly, I think Archbishop Benedictus is just changing the landscape of the matchup. I had a very clear image in my head, but you know, that's typically with closed deck lists and with players unwilling to put 7 mana 4/6s that dilute your deck in them. But tournament play is a different beast. It just changes the way that games work.
And there is the Anduin as well, which gives now even more credence to a slightly earlier Archbishop Benedictus if he does want to go for it. Because I think, you know, Silvors has executed so far perfectly. You actually want to draw as many cards as you possibly can early on, so that you draw some of those key options you want from your beginning deck, right? Cards like Alexstrasza, cards like Shadow Reaper Anduin, these are things that you want to have. So you draw throughout the opening turns and then play Benedictus as early as possible, because A, you then steal the maximum amount of cards from your opponent's deck, or copy the maximum amount of cards from your opponent's deck, and B, you prevent that counterplay that Admirable mentioned earlier, because it's super unlikely that A, Hunterace has even drawn it, and B, look at his mana to have access to that play.
The other one too is just, you have to think of that as well. To me, that was the first place my head went, because in game number 1, we saw so many opportunities for Faceless Zola.
Yeah.
Archbishop Benedictus, I would say, is a card that players rarely have an opportunity to practice against. It's something that you would almost have to deliberately do. The idea that you Faceless Zola it, I imagine, is not an instinctual thought. It certainly wasn't for me. It's because game 1 was sticking around so much in my head.
Right.
But now that opportunity's gone. Hunterace needs to win by dealing damage to Silvors. Now that being said, there are a lot of pretty useless cards in Silvors' deck right now. One of the major ones that I'm thinking of is Reckless Flurry. You know, there's a ton of cards in Silvors' deck right now, and Hunterace has just, you know, things to play for a while. But shaking his head, you know, when this play happens to you this early, it is bad news. And that window is going to quickly close in on when he can actually win. However, the natural healing from Silvors has now gone away, so every point of chip damage sticks to the bones. Can't heal it back two at a time.
Nope. There's a little bit of healing to come out from Hunterace's deck here. There's that shield block that we just saw Hunterace draw. That is now in Silvors' deck as well. There's, I guess, Dr. Boom is in there as well if he ever wants to go down that alley.
Yeah, but that replaces your Anduin. Yep. That's something you're typically not very interested in.
Right.
And these Mind Blasts, they take a long time to get there, so, you know, start cycling through cards as efficiently as you can.
Yeah, if it's not clear, this is not going to be played out like a conventional matchup. If you're familiar with how the Mind Blast Priest works, this ain't that. This is him just throwing out Mind Blast there just to get the refresh on the hero power so he could kill a 3/4. That was the intention of that turn, controlling the board and removing damage from play.
Yeah, Silvors has in effect become the odd warrior player here. His goal is to try and manipulate the matchup to where Hunterace has no aggressive viability.
Absolutely.
And not willing to play the weaponized Pinata here, given that 10 cards in hand. Don't want to burn nothing.
Oh, baby.
This time for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
I get it. Turn the opponent minion into Devil Sword in game 1. Turn your own minion into a squirrel in game 5. I get it, Tickmaster. Hunterace thinking about the damage so much, swings with the Super Collider!
He has 2 in hand, and his opponent is just drawing Odd Warrior cards most of the time. Like, his intention for swinging that into a minion is just so limited at this point.
I'm gonna say, there are times I really like going face, and for whatever reason, that one was just extremely satisfying.
Yeah.
You know, talking about aggressive viability, I would say Reckless Flurry is near the bottom of that list right now. That is pretty much a dead card in Hunterace's deck at this point. The minion pressure is not going to compound. You can't assault through it. and you're seeing how his armor is becoming less of a priority as he struggles to spend mana to get anything going.
The really fascinating part about Archbishop Benedictus for me as well is that as the game goes on, because quite often, like, the most important games where you play Archbishop are going to be control mirrors, right? In control mirrors, your opponents hold cards in their hand for long periods of time. So as you play Archbishop Benedictus and then draw cards from their deck, you start to, through process of elimination, learn what the held cards on the left-hand side of your opponent's hand are. Because you start to draw cards from the deck that aren't those cards. So you get a checklist in your brain of things that you start to eliminate.
That is so much to think of. See, that's the piece of the tournament puzzle that I personally just do not fit together. I'm like, there are so many important things to think about that if I try to focus on all of these, I'm going to lose it.
But I imagine when you're an Archbishop Benedictus player, when you put that card in your deck on purpose, you are familiar with that kind of little dance.
The other thing, too, is as your opponent draws and plays cards, you start to get a glimpse of what's in your deck.
Yes.
The cards on the left side you know are not there as they play them.
And as Amnesiac once told me... Yeah.
It's about as Baku time as any.
It's player 7-8. Giddy up.
I will silence their screams.
Welp.
Yeah, that one's staying there for a while. No dragon in hand for Twilight Acolyte.
Is it? Is Dr. Boom, on average, a better card for controlling the board than a persistent source of 2
No,
damage?
I think that's staying in hand for quite a while.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Okay.
Not even close.
Okay.
I really don't think so.
Okay.
You're giving me a look like you don't believe. What? No way! I don't believe that. I disagree. Now, I think he's going to win anyway because he's got 33 cards in an Odd Warrior effective matchup.
Uh-huh.
But I don't believe it. I don't believe him. Nope, I don't.
Do you have any reasoning for your argument?
Just look at it. It just, there's no way that Dr. Boom Mad Genius Hero Power is better than Shadow Reaper Anduin. I don't buy it.
Okay.
Shadow Reaper Anduin, just listen to his name.
But the remainder of his deck is predominantly Odd Warrior cards, right? Because he drew a lot of his Mind Blast Priest cards before he then played the Benedictus.
So they're quite costly.
Which means on average, yeah, he's drawing an Odd Warrior style card more often. So he has a hero in play that synergizes with those cards because it's from the original intended deck, as opposed to a costly card that doesn't recycle his Shadow Reaper Anduin card efficiently.
I'm going to keep squinting at you, but I'm starting to be sold a tad bit.
Okay.
That buy or sell segment at the start where we deliberate on whether or not decks should or should not be brought to the tournament.
Yes.
I'm now in between the answer of the two.
Okay.
I'm picking up the product and looking at it. I haven't purchased it quite yet, though.
Okay. Not to mention that, like, Silvors thinks that there are Reckless Flurries and Shield Slants in his deck, right?
So it's a true story.
The ability to gain a +7 hero power that he can use those with at some point is something that he does need to look for as well.
Argument for holding it as well, though. It provides you 7 armor immediately.
Great point, yeah.
I feel like we're going to have a lot of point-counterpoint style debates.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll do this half-hour debate after the series backstage on our own time.
Well, I mean, we could do it. We got plenty of time right now. I mean,
yeah, no,
we got another 26 minutes here.
Yeah. I feel like maybe there's some other things that might be worth talking about, though. I'm not entirely sure.
Well, as they come up,
yeah,
we can table the debate for a little.
Okay.
Hunterace is focusing so hard that the camera is, he's draining focus from the camera as he's doing it.
There's only enough room in a building for a certain amount of focus, and Hunterace is using all of it, leaving not enough for his camera.
Oh, I love that.
That means he's made up his mind now that he's refocused.
Yeah. A Psychic Scream just not a big deal at this point. Like, obviously every Psychic Scream Silvors casts,
I think it helps.
Reduces the
Hunterace.
fatigue advantage that he has a little bit, but it's not a huge deal. He still has an overwhelming advantage, as you can see, 32 cards to 15 remaining in the fatigue race.
there are so many scary facets to think about from HunterAce as well. Normally, you know, the two classes being combined together is reserved for the Halloween arena that takes place every single year. Why can't I remember the name of it now? What the actual event is called?
I cannot.
Either way, you're thinking about priest cards and warrior cards at the same time. So like, as you play this security rover, you're like, oh, what about Cabal Shadow Priest? What about random warrior card X that punishes this card? I can't really think of one at the moment, but you get the point I'm trying to get at here. There's so many more facets to think about now. You know, we talked about the difficulty just from Silvors' side of piecing together what's remaining in the deck.
But then on the other side, you know, because there is so much to play around, like at what point does it just become, well, just shut your eyes, you know? If it's just one given card that I'm playing around, what if I just don't play around it?
And this is one of the reasons why, you know, I'm going to shout out Zalay here again, as I've done this like the third time now in this cast alone, but it's been a pretty long series. He preaches a lot of ABC Hearthstone, fundamentals of the game, and really focusing on the little things that add up to a big difference. And I have found that just in a game of Hearthstone, if you're going to go this deep, you're just not going to remember all this stuff. It's just not how brains really work. And so being able to bring things to a simplicity, I think, is a very fine art that is really underappreciated in a lot of situations. It's tough to just have perfect technical play in general, let alone accounting for all the memory and all the weird, wacky things that can happen.
Of course, because Silvors now, who, by the way, if you're just tuning in, started this game playing Priest, has played played the Dr. Boom hero, he is now considered by the game to be a warrior, which means when he is discovering cards, he picks up warrior cards, which is why you saw Direhorn Hatchling and Ornery Direhorn as options there off the Stonehill Defender.
I was curious if you were going to go that route, or the fact that he took Ornery Direhorn over a Direhorn Hatchling.
I do also think that's worth talking about, because, I mean, does he need more of a fatigue advantage? No. Would another 6/9 in his deck be a good thing? Yeah, sure, it always is.
But getting a 6-mana 5/5 that could, oh, I don't know, not be targeted by spells or hero powers, potentially a very good thing.
Yeah. I think also something that Silvors has to consider is that if he plays a Direhorn Hatchling, that then gives his opponent access to Direhorn Hatchlings, which he might not have otherwise. Through Faceless Manipulators, through Zolas and all those kind of things, he can then create additional minions himself. Because also, Silvors was looking towards Master Spell this turn, on where he ended up playing the Stonehill. And I think that Master Spell ends up being a really, really important card for him, because at some point, HunterAce is going to have to go for like a Direhorn Faceless kind of turn just to try and get something going, and then Master Spell can just shatter that immediately.
Yeah, using that to shut down, you know, further fatigue, you know, offsets, I guess, is the word I'm going to choose here for HunterAce.
Yeah.
Can be a big deal because, you know, HunterAce is still amassing quite a large life total. Shadowy Branduin has been overrun now by the Dr. Boom Mad Genius from Silvors. There's no Shadowy Branduin effect left in the deck, so the damage that's left for him is pretty natural minion damage. Every single time that HunterAce is able to crank out 4 more armor, and then crank out 4 more armor, then crank out 4 more armor, you know, there's a chance he adds 5 or 6 or 7 more cards to his deck. Suddenly that fatigue thing sets in a little bit more.
It's just not 17 though, is it?
It's not 17. It really is not. But, you know, perhaps it gives him extra time, and that extra time means extra damage.
Yes.
I will side.
The little things matter, and I think optimizing right now is paramount importance.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just to combine all the things that we've both been saying on the previous turns, like I think if you can gain a ton of armor, and that buys you 3 to 5 extra turns, and then you can get 2 or 3 Direhorn Hatchlings shuffled into your deck, and that gets you 3 or 4 extra turns as well, then maybe there's a world where you get enough of a board to be able to push through. But it's tiny fractions at this point that HunterAce is dealing in, but we've mentioned all series how HunterAce is the man that finds tiny fractions in situations like this. This would be one of his tiniest, though.
Enough pennies and you got $1.
Yes.
Or, I guess, pence into a British sterling for you, or whatever you guys call it. I don't know. Very elaborate death sound on that minion.
It really is, yeah.
Oh, I love that music.
Nice little raptors. Oh, a shadow.
Well, that's clever.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, as he started to play the turn, whether the corner sentry was actually achieving anything, and no, not really. There's no huge upside to it, but he does essentially get a free 2/6 because of the hero power that he rolled that turn, being able to counter it.
I still just can't believe that Archbishop Benedictus might win this game. Like, that card alone just playing such a heavy facet in how the matchup operates.
I wonder.
It's pretty crazy to look at.
Yeah, and Silvors found it pretty much off the mulligan, and then I think he reacted to that early draw perfectly, which was just to draw as many cards as he could, and we saw him get rewarded for that, yes, as he has been, as you mentioned, rewarded with some pretty perfect outcomes to the decisions that he's been making, but they've been decisions which have led towards those perfect outcomes. He's put himself in positions to make that happen. We've seen hunterace getting very frustrated, but Silvors' execution up until that point of just draw, try and find my Alex, try and find my Shadow Reaper Anduin. He did find the Shadow Reaper Anduin, which then came in huge just for a couple of turns to kill one giant minion on the board to reduce some pressure, and then get a little bit of chip damage and board control through here or there. And he has then since switched to the Dr. Boom form that has been drawn from cards originally in hunterace's deck.
No swing with the Super Collider. So he's looking to have that be pretty massive tempo, I guess, in that situation then? Use it as a push turn?
That's just 2 damage to face.
Ooh, and hunterace sees the Mass Dispel on just the Direhorn Hatchling.
Mm-hmm.
Does he have another Hatchling in deck?
Yes.
So
I believe so.
So that would mean that the opportunity for Zolas and Faceless is still there.
Yeah.
I think you made an excellent point with the fact that hunterace at some point was going to have to go for a Direhorn Faceless turn or a Direhorn Zola turn and then end up, in that cycle somewhere. And that's where my head was sat with Mass Dispel. Instead, Silvors is taking it the first opportunity. It's likely to still just be enough.
Yeah.
But kind of surprising that he took it so aggressively to me.
Yeah, I think when I outlined that Master Spell usage, that was like the dream world, right? If hunterace was to fully extend into a bunch of copies and he got to silence all of them, great. I think as long as it was used on a Direhorn Hatchling, I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I'm not like adamant that he needs to hold out that long.
And Dr. Boom buried very deep now for hunterace, and that's a card he needed early on. The fact that Silvors shuffled hunterace's deck into his deck, had 39 cards and drew the Dr. Boom first.
Yeah.
I'm still surprised that it was even played. But it has been doing work. I mean, the rush has been very vital.
The rush has been huge, yeah. And it's something that we saw hunterace react to as well when the Dr. Boom was played. Like, I'm not sure if you noticed because you were having a very similar reaction of disbelief to it being played initially, but hunterace was freaking out. And it's a problem that most people, even casual players watching at home, will be familiar with. It's that horrible feeling of playing against Priest and they get to use your good cards before you do. Honestly, I think few things are as frustrating in Hearthstone as to when that happens to you.
I heard frustrating in Priest, and I agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Is someone injured?
I also believe this is the first time in quite a long time that I've not had the Innkeeper come and remind me that a minion with stealth cannot have taunt at the same time.
Wait, a minion with stealth cannot taunt?
I've
never heard that before.
The Innkeeper typically pops up and tells us when we're in these scenarios.
Wow.
This just happens very rarely.
If only that happened every single time.
Experienced spectator. Shout out to the team there.
What now?
Double Faceless now racked up, which...
I'm looking at pinatas.
2 Facelesses in hand is usually... It usually gets your mind ticking in a control mirror as to what you're going to end up using these Facelesses on, because this is not quite conventional in terms of control mirror. Normally when Odd Warrior plays a control mirror, a true control mirror, neither player has really chosen to draw cards for the entire game. And so both of your decks tick away at a very similar rate, and you end up with a similar amount of resources at the end of the game. And then you get to know exactly how to use each one of your resources because both players have drawn their entire deck, and it's resource for resource, card for card. So you get to find the absolute dream scenario for a card like Faceless Manipulator and try and make that happen. In as lopsided a fatigue matchup as this one is, that's not the case. You might just have to use it in a good scenario just to get something going.
I'm looking at the Pinata. I'm thinking that hunterace just wants to get the Pinata with Dr. Boom Mad Genius, so it has Rush, so it's, you know, a double ticked effect. You get to kill something and you get this legendary at the same time, but, you know, that clock is ticking quite rapidly.
Real rapidly. But I can see that being a thing for sure, like Dr. Boom one turn and then follow it up with Pinata Faceless immediately afterwards.
Ooh.
Try and get some juice.
If you're not going to draw the best card in your deck, that's usually a good substitute when there's a Twilight Drake on board.
I'm glad you added that qualifier at the end, like when there's a Twilight Drake.
Right.
Otherwise, don't sign me up for drawing a for drawing an Iron Beak Owl when I want the best card in my deck. That sounds awful.
Now Faceless Twilight and silence your opponents.
Yeah.
Looks like a real thing.
And I think this is the perfect example of a turn I was talking about, which is just use the Faceless when it's a good turn. You can't afford to be sitting around waiting for the dream scenario because you are 16 cards behind in fatigue. You're not going to see your opponent draw every option. You can't afford to sit and wait for the dream scenario for that Faceless to appear.
And trading a 2/3 for a charge of Super Collider there as well as 2 damage. I'm actually quite interested in that trade. That seemed hasty to me, I suppose. I feel like trading a charge of a weapon for a 2/3 is typically how I just use 2/3s. Or charges of weapons for that matter.
Again, it's one of those cards.
What could have been.
Yeah, it's one of those cards that just gets the creative juices flowing. It's the kind of card in matchups that you'd like this that you just normally love to see because it just creates so many possibilities. But,
What now?
Okay, I'm thinking Archbishop Benedictus from the weaponized Pinata.
Oh God, no. The humanity.
Well, it's an Archbishop, not a Manatee.
Great point, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking. How embarrassing.
I wonder.
hunterace is, it's very rare that I see him, you know, looking like as though he even thinks he might lose this game well before it's actually just finished. You know, again, it could be a foregone conclusion at this point, but you have to dig and find what is the way that I can win this game. Right now, that answer to me is quite clear. It's this particular card.
And I think it might have been this for a while as well. So he upgrades his Pinata to a golden Pinata. And he moves on with his life.
Ooh, that Witch Doctor looks much worse after you've just mixed in a bunch of
Yeah.
Warrior cards.
Yeah.
But now, you know, Silvors' position, is he looking at the exact same thing? Is he like, well, hang on a second now. I have two Faceless Manipulators.
Okay, then.
You know, you don't want to Psychic Scream Zola back, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The Undertaker!
Whoa!
That can shuffle back in.
Yeah, hunterace, have a long, hard think, because we're doing the same.
Whoa! I mean, that could be weaponized Pinatas.
Yep.
Direhorn Hatchlings.
Yep.
And what's the other Death Rattle? Is there another one? Is he seen like random mechs that provide Death Rattles yet? I don't think so.
Not from his side, because there hasn't been a Dr. Boom.
So
There's
right
been
now-
a bigger assembly, but no, I don't think anything has come off that.
That's Matriarchs and in a weaponized Pinata.
Yes,
So I think it's one of each at the current state.
I believe so.
If you silence Direhorn Matriarch and then it dies, does Undertaker count that Death Rattle? Or has it been removed? That's a situation I can safely say I have not encountered.
Yes, because it reads the death rattles of friendly minions that have died this game. So the friendly minions have died, and then the death rattle of the card still exists, whether it was removed or not.
So even if it was silenced first, because the silence technically removes the text from the card.
Yeah, it does.
Curious about that.
Well, needless to say, the Undertaker definitely made life interesting.
So also Faceless Manipulator with it.
Yes, there is.
If it lives for a turn. And behind a big taunt, you know, that's a situation where it could live for a turn. Is there, in my head now, I'm thinking, is there a random chance that hunterace can actually extend the game long enough to hit the max timer on a turn and force a draw? I'm not even kidding. Like, he still has the tank up hero power. There's still 5 more turns of this. And then you're still looking at extra shuffles that'll go back into the deck. Like, I'm not even kidding at this point.
No.
You say no.
I do.
Okay. I'm not sold yet.
All right. If we got into, like, Astral Tiger territory, then yeah, maybe, but...
You can't make one of those.
No.
I say that, of course, but I don't, maybe there's a random card that can.
Silvors, it's a bait. It's a bait. You really want that owl.
This is just nuts. The other thing to me that's funny is that Silvors can convert the Psychic Screams in hand with the Lillian boss that he got from his weaponized Pinata. So the Psychic Screams, which he just basically doesn't want to use right now, he can just turn into random warrior spells. And so,
Nathan,
Dead Man's Hand?
Nathan, my brain hurts and I need an adult.
Well, that's definitely not me.
Okay. There it is. There's Diehorn number 2. Coming out for hunterace. And the Iron Beak Owl does come down from Silvors as well.
Yeah. That means that the Undertaker's just, it's pretty much ready to go. Now, if it's an isolated minion, however, there's a Tink Master in Silvors' hand.
Oh, wow, you're so right.
So can hunterace find a situation where he gets that down without, you know, losing his board in this position? The fact that all Silvors minions, mechs rather, have rush, I think makes that card much tougher to actually get in play. You know, I'm thinking as crazy as, is he, you know, thinking, I need to shield slam my own Undertaker when it happens to get such a massive Death Route effect. It's going to have 3 of them attached. I think it's quite rare that you're presented an opportunity for so much value in killing your own minion.
Right.
And hunterace here, I think this is quite smart as well. Knowing that the extra pressure actually means a lot right now with what's in hand, Silvors may be prompted to Psychic Scream this, which means it unsilences the weaponized Pinata.
It's so much rush damage, Security Rovers, when you're in Dr. Boom form. I think so. No real overreaction from Silvors. He knows he has some time to play with.
Okay, so now Dr. Boom Mad Genius drawn for hunterace. 4 cards left in the deck. Undertaker's juiced with 4 Death Rattles at the moment. 2 Direhorn Hatchlings, which we assume the silence counts towards it. And then also the 2 weaponized Pinatas as they die.
3. There's one before this, I believe.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There's
the
one
Undertaker
before it,
came off it.
And hunterace is very interested in pushing damage at the moment.
Absolutely.
As well.
He's the aggro deck for the first time in its measly life. Odd Warrior is the aggro deck.
Yes, I think a wise trade here as well. You hit this Security Rover, it makes a 2/3, and then the Super Collider will wipe out the 2 minions on board as well. Important not to attack a Security Rover directly with Super Collider. I have made this mistake.
Okay.
Makes a lot of 2/3s in that instance.
I don't think I've ever done that. So the 2/3 spawns first, and the Rover just attacks the 2/3 that you created?
I
Is that what happens?
believe that's what happens, and then it attacks 2/3, and it creates another Rover after that. It's a big chain reaction where like there's some funny Defile stuff as well.
Sure.
And the Scream now unsilences that weaponized Pinata. However, that now moves the Undertaker to having 2 Direhorn Matriarch, I'm sorry, 2 Direhorn Hatchlings and a weaponized Pinata, because those 2 Death Rattle minions did not actually die.
Correct.
So Undertaker gets 2 more shuffles in that instance. However, there's a
Until-
Tink Master in Silvors' hand.
Yeah, the Undertaker itself gets Tink Mastered or Psychic Screamed. Like, Psychic Scream puts it on the later base. They're still going to have to deal with it at some point, but it solves the problem in the immediacy.
And HunterAce has no interest in playing it right now. Like, this was very clearly not a thought to him, so he's waiting until Undertaker can die to an effect before he's going to play that. This is crazy. This is the next level stuff that I love to see from the top players. This is also a very real amount of damage that's taking place. And Wild Pyromancer has one spell that goes with it right now. It's Psychic Scream.
Yikes.
Is this doable? I mean, this is looking very doable now.
He's definitely making inroads. This was not a good discover for Silvors here. He needed some kind of board state, something to address the board state, which is not difficult to do when everything you discover is going to have rush. You just need something with some kind of decent stat base. It does not get it in the end. Ends up caballing a 1-1 just to reduce some pressure.
Kaboom hero power on HunterAce's side actually plays to real effect. It's quite rare. That one looks so good as it does right now, but that Kaboom is playing.
Hold your breath,
the
folks.
Super Collider roll. Kathrena. There's no beast. Oh, the Direhorn.
There sure is.
Oh, the Direhorn.
Hatchling.
The Matriarchs, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But do you want to pull cards from your deck? You know, maybe for Kathrena's sake, yeah.
Kill your opponent.
I mean, Silvors is down to 11. And Super Colliders, he's just tanking damage at this point. He's going to 8.
Suddenly, 76 to 8 is a lot of cards in Fatigue in terms of a damage differential as well. It's not 12.
It's very real. Now, if you play Kathrena, though, the Undertaker can get the death rattle of Kathrena.
Honestly, I'm out.
so look, so you want to Undertaker first that instance to Shield Slam. However, you could, you know, the extra... there's so much crazy stuff going on right now. My head is going to explode.
Yes.
This is round 1.
A hatchling has legit died, right?
Yes.
So if you play Undertaker first, you shield slam it, you're then getting more 6/9s potentially shuffled into your deck. So your Kathrena can then... Well, no, because it's only the 6/9 in there. It's not like you're increasing your chances like you do in Death Rattle Hunter of like guaranteeing a King Crush or something. Like, you're getting the 6/9 if it doesn't get silenced.
I think you actually want the additional one first because of the effect of Kathrena. You know, if you happen to draw one, you want to have the other one there for Kathrena. I have never seen so much thought put into 2 various random
What's in the box?
strange plays.
Hatchling, Pinata, and
we forgot about the Kaboom bot!
Okay.
So HunterAce just says, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. Oh, and that's going to open up the Tank Master, though.
Do you have an answer to a 5/5 afterwards? If it's a 5/5?
Oh, that's an excellent point. I mean, I guess you could Psychic Scream, but that doesn't give you tempo in that situation, and you really want the tempo.
Right.
This would be a good time for a master.
So I guess the Alex Straza for defense.
It has to be a Tink Master turn, though, sure.
Whoa. No, I don't know about that, Sottle.
This is just a problem that you have to solve later now.
TC-130 into dislocator.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But maybe that was just the extenuating factor for him, is that he just didn't want to have a 5/5 on the board that he couldn't deal with when he's as low as 8 in this position.
And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is no actual Direhorn. There's one Direhorn in HunterAce's deck, right? Both the Direhorns have died, right?
Yes. One was silenced and then killed, and then one was straight up killed with a rushing security rope.
53-point Shield Slam does a number on a Bulldozer here, and I'm looking at Kathrena Shield Slam, and suddenly HunterAce is about to be ahead, but he draws the Direhorn right away. Oh, my brain is going to melt in this situation. So many things are happening. I'm freaking out! that threatens lethal. You got to do something about you got to Tankmaster or Alex now. You actually just really don't have much of an option when the laser comes
hero
up.
power roll, yeah.
Ziliax.
Ooh. Ziliax, the absolute lad in this position. But that does back him off now from the Alexstrasza option, leaves him with Tankmaster, and now there's a Tankmaster that he didn't use beforehand, which, yeah, sure, is potentially saving his life here, but if he uses it here, there's now the Undertaker still in the deck.
1-1 gets made. HunterAce.
Deal with.
Look at HunterAce's frustration at the outcome as well. Honorable Chill win Yeti, you mentioned. That doesn't do anything right now. Just a 4-5.
Just a 4-5.
Is someone injured?
Job done.
Entire Super Collider charge used on a Squirrel.
Wow. If he can manage to stick a security rover, the Ziliax can fuse onto it.
That's not looking easy, though, having now lost the board.
Okay,
Dustbreaker in
then.
hand with Dragon for Silvors as well. Which we shouldn't be surprised in.
No,
3 hours ago when this game started, he was a Dragon Priest. So we shouldn't be taking note of the fact that there's a Dustbreaker and a Dragon in his hand. But guess what? There is, and that's weird because now he's a warrior.
Yeah, deal with it. Us.
Yeah. We definitely have to hold that right now.
This laser, I want to send this laser face.
Oh, I love that fuse thing.
If you're trying to stick this board for Ziliax, though...
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I said I wanted to. I wasn't necessarily sold on the idea. I'm just telling you like what I said, my heart's desire.
Sure. I think if you're Silvors, we just got to get ourselves a Ziliax in play.
I'm looking at defensive Alex as well. I mean,
it's a good option.
This isn't really a scenario you could have practiced. You're having to just figure it out as you go along. It's scary. I'm scared I'm not even playing.
That does leave that 2-3 hanging around on board, though. This is what you've been talking about, Admirable, and with one card left remaining in deck for HunterAce. Okay. Silvors, if he has been keeping track, knows that there is a Ziliax left to play with.
I'm seeing a wacky line here. Bear with me.
Oh, I am.
Fuse the Ziliax. Smash face.
This would be a good
Reckless
time for
flurry.
a master plan.
The Divine Shield preserves your 5/5 minion in play.
Uh-huh.
And you clear your opponent's board.
Uh-huh.
It's now off the menu.
At the cost of 53 damage to yourself.
You gotta kill them. I don't think you're gonna win in the long game here. I really don't. I think this is responsible. However, you gave up the minion. You know, I'm thinking, like, could you have just won the brawl that turn?
Right.
Perhaps even.
I think
something desperate, I feel like, has to give, but there's still the Undertaker's the last card, though.
I think it is getting somewhere close to win a brawl o'clock for HunterAce.
It's a technical military time explanation for it anyway.
Yes.
I mean, we wait around here too much longer. They're going to have to invent win a brawl o'clock to have enough time to finish this round. I mean, my gosh.
Divine him on top of this to boot as well.
HunterAce's face, too. It's just like his brow continues to get more furrowed as the game goes along.
I don't make mistakes.
All right, what you got for us this time? Pinata. Kaboom bot.
Oh, why?
Pinata.
Why, Kaboom Bot? He showed up twice.
But now if this Undertaker was ever going to put in work, we do have to go back and ask questions about Silvors' use of the Tinkmaster that, you know, quite fittingly does end up trading with it in the end.
Those are massive minions at this point, though.
And Emerus is now back to Haunters yet again. Subject 9 is nothing in this spot apart from an 8-8 after Emerus comes down.
But Basmandi's going to be a 14-14, and Katharina's going to be a 12-12.
Yes.
That is sizable considering the Twilight Acolyte has been used. Is Emerus going to return the fate that Silvors brought to hunterace with an Emerus? Is that possible?
It is. It's incredibly unlikely, I think.
Well, he's at 20. And hunterace, you know, he took 1 fatigue last turn. That's a long way to go.
No, it's a really long way away. But, you know, it's not like these minions have charge, right? Like, he's going to have to get them on a board that isn't as overwhelmingly against him as this one already is. And there's just so much gas, so much heat still to come here from Silvors. This might come down to hunterace just finding the perfect, like, equilibrium point of the Reckless Flurry, where he, like, throws it away to take a big tempo swing.
You said win a brawl o'clock.
That's true as well. This is an option to try and get rid of some of this board state too. I was looking at potentially Reckless Flurry to clear at the time where it costs you the least armor but still clears, and then you can One-Sam D to follow that up with a huge minion afterwards. But the Brawl is a good starting point for him, for sure, because that now alleviates so much pressure. Silvors has just found himself 7 armor, followed by drawing a Reckless Flurry, which is some much-needed removal, as niche as it is. What order do you go in now, if you're hunterace?
Where's my...
Hunterace says 12-12 first.
I like the 12-12 first because it's 8 mana. You're looking at a turn where perhaps the final push that you make is Reckless Flurry, you drop Basmandi, or Subject 9 with a hero power.
Oh boy, the 6-9s. The 6-9s are just such a big wall.
To me, though, that's where it can be dangerous. If Silvors does any foolish misstep here, a Reckless Flurry and an attack for 12 can happen. And instead, he's very interested in cutting this down as quickly as possible.
He knows. He knows.
Yeah.
The 2 cards remaining, he literally knows, are 2 random nonsense legendaries and 2 Reckless Flurries.
And by the way, the random nonsense legendaries are buffed.
Yes. So his game is very binary right now. Play around 2 cards that I have no information on, so forget about them, or play around 2 cards that I have full information on, Reckless Flurry. It's that simple. That's all he has to do, is find the best plays against Reckless Flurry every game and hope against hope that these other 2 random cards don't beat him, because he really can't do anything about them.
Flurry's right away.
Which, by the way, he was at 27 at the start of that turn. We were concerned he was down at 8 just a little while ago, and that has turned around the corner real quick.
And I'm looking at this now. That's more that's been used in this situation. hunterace has really got to figure out how to put this together. Is it just both at the same time?
What?
Like, he's just going for the 14-14 here. You hear Power Face, like, is his goal to just get both minions out at the same time? Or is it to Reckless Flurry to push and keep going from there? Like, this feels like a lot of times you're almost sacrificing this. I mean, your opponent has the laser ready, 6, 7, 8, 9 on board. They need 3 more damage to take care of it.
There's Ziliax. Gets the lifesteal on the extra point as well with the Magnetize. There goes your 14-14.
And I think it's Reckless Flurry time. I don't think...
He plays an Acolyte of Fate.
Yeah.
Oh boy. One more update to the idea that Silvors was down as low as 8, I believe, just a couple of turns ago. Oh! As As if this series needed anything else, the final nail in the coffin for HunterAce in what is just our very first game.
This is just a wacky series. And so much has gone right for Silvors. There's a chance he's just lost track of what HunterAce has had as well. I mean, think about how much has gone on this game. Are you thinking to yourself, wait a minute, are the last 2 cards Reckless Flurry? Did we see one of those? Like, the notion that you're remembering that to me is ridiculous, okay?
A little while ago, HunterAce had like 56 armor. I think it's pretty safe to say he didn't really Reckless Flurry at any point.
Either way, you don't even need the big game hunter, says Silvors. He's like, well, maybe you discover something bigger.
With his 2 Reckless Flurries.
Well, with the Dr. Boom hero power.
That's fair.
You suit up a bulldozer, and then you use the Beryllium Nullifier the next turn.
All right.
I don't think you can get the same hero power back to back. But it's spelled out. Silvors. He is locked HunterAce out of this game. But boy, what an entertaining series this has been.
I'm sorry, Casper, but that is a scoop. You are mathematically dead, my friend. What a series. I honestly have nothing more to add than that. It's been an absolute roller coaster, start to finish. Every single game has had just insane moments. And again, this is just the first series of the 2009 Winter Playoff. 2009?
Yeah, no, 2009. We've gone back.
All right, this series has melted my brain so much, I have regressed a decade in time.
Benjamin Button's disease has been acquired by Sonnel. He's getting younger as the years go by.
I am just a youthful 22-year-old right now. Far more obnoxious than I would turn out to be while I was 32, believe it or not.
I have been just informed that 2009 is actually when the series began, though.